Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. It is Tuesday, April 7th. We are on time and we are live. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Today is the day that Mr. Donnie T has set the deadline for his Iranian attacks. We have a lot to discuss going into today in terms of if these attacks actually happen, if the broader market actually feels they are more legit than not. We are red in the pre-markets. And the reason for that is because, well, we got a Truth Social post to start off the day, because why not? Best way to start off a Tuesday morning is that Truth Social post, and it's a little aggressive to say the least. I think that's part of the reason we're going red. Also, the very nature of the fact that today is Tuesday and today is the day for the deadline. 8 p.m. Pacific. By the way, Trump's going to be having dinner with the ambassador to India at 7 p.m. So right before the 8 p.m. deadline, he will be at dinner. So maybe we see something happen before that 8 p.m. deadline. Maybe we see it happen during it. Maybe we see a potential extension of the deadline a few hours before it ends up happening. We do have some headlines of that last night, which caused futures to go slightly green, but then the stuff that happened this morning caused futures to go red because we're in a up and down and up market. That's the nature of how stocks have been like for the past couple months. And it doesn't seem like anything has changed over the past 24 hours. NVIDIA right there, down about 1.3%. Bitcoin, which was almost 70,000 yesterday, at 68.3. S&P 500, down 0.5%. Basically, the S&P is giving back everything it got yesterday. And we'll talk more about some of the price action that happened yesterday because it is very interesting. Broadcom, big deal with Google last night, and Anthropic. We have some brand new numbers from Anthropic. There is a lot to talk about. We will get into that. That stock up 3%, and Broadcom, quite frankly, deserves, I think, to be up a lot more than 3%. Apple is down about 1%. You got all the healthcare names that are getting a nice little pump because the rates on what they can charge went from 0% assumed to 2.48%. Market really liked that. 250 basis points more of what they could charge versus what the street expected. So obviously UNH is up, CNC is up, Clover, Molina, Oscar, all those getting a bid. Casey's joined the S&P 500. It was up a lot more overnight. Casey's General Stores, $27 billion company. Now it's only up about 1%, but they are joining the S&P. Everything else is relatively red. Your international stocks are red. Your memory stocks are red. Your tech stocks are red. And we will get into all the reasons for why it is red and keep going from there as we get closer to this 8 p.m. deadline, which is coming up pretty soon. Iranian TV, all diplomatic channels and indirect talks have been frozen following Trump's recent threats. All right, well, you got your headline from Iranian state media, which will segue us into what Trump tweeted this morning, which I wonder how much people believe this or don't believe this, but this is what he said. Let's get right into it again. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. President Trump, 15 minutes ago. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. So when he says, we will find out tonight, it's almost like he's scripting a movie. Like he wants you to tune in to what happens at 8 p.m. tonight. The level of excitement and keeping people on their toes and trying to hype things up, Trump has obviously been very good at over the past, well, really his whole life. And as president, he's also, executed that level of hype. However, every time it gets to the point where the hype needs to manifest itself into one of his threats, we've seen him retrace, because at the end of the day, I think also he recognizes that sometimes it might go a little too far and he doesn't want to actually take over Greenland or actually tear up the entire world at the level that he initially said he wanted to. And there is a bit of a retracement. Maybe today has that same retracement. And I quite frankly think, based on the green momentum we had yesterday, the market is assuming we are not going to be as aggressive as what is being priced in from these tweets. But if Trump is legit serious about a whole civilization dying tonight, which, by the way, I would hope he's not talking about Iranian people. I would hope he's talking about a corrupt regime, but you can't beg but to think, like, okay, a whole civilization. Like, what exactly are you talking about here? And what does that mean when you talk about an entire civilization? And, are you really going to attack energy infrastructure, civilian energy infrastructure, or is there going to be massive collateral damage from a civilian perspective? Like, no one wants to see that. And I don't know how much the broader not only American public, but global public would be okay if, millions of Iranian people died because of some attack. Like I don't know how much people would think that's legitimate in the context of warfare. So it's a hell of a claim. It's a claim that makes you think it's not necessarily real, but time will tell to see if that ends up happening. Also, we do have some evidence this morning, Reuters and Bloomberg reporting that the U.S. has struck Iran's Karg Island, which processes 90% of Iranian oil. So multiple reports this morning already putting out the argument right here that the Karg Island has been hit. Now, obviously, there's military equipment that they are striking on that island. So it's not necessarily civilian infrastructure. It's not necessarily affecting the 92 million people that live in Iran intrinsically or directly. But there are already reports this morning that, yes, we have attacked Karg Island. Obviously, Trump joked yesterday about taking the oil and all that stuff. The question is going to be, are the strikes tonight going to be as aggressive? Is it just going to be towards the IRGC? Is it going to be actually attacking regular civilians? I would imagine they would try to have targeted attacks today. The Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that the U.S. is preparing with classified intelligence different ways they can have targeted attacks that affect military personnel and military equipment in the region. So if there is some massive civilization that burns on fire tonight, I would hope it's rooted in military warfare and not civilian warfare. But this is the threat. But then also in Trump's tweet, he says maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? Kind of teasing the fact that maybe there is going to be some level of a deal. And I think that's why the markets are on their toes. Now, one interesting stat about what happened with the S&P 500 yesterday, 36 million shares were traded. Why does that matter? Well, that is the lowest volume we've seen on the S&P since February of 2025. In the midst of everything that has happened over the past year, yesterday had the lowest volume in over a year in the broader market. And when you think about that, what was the market up? What did the market do yesterday? It went up. So it kind of makes you think that a lot of people stayed on the sidelines. And yes, the market did go up yesterday, but the market, it might have been relatively fake because the people that wanted to kind of play the whole, oh, Trump's not going to attack that aggressively, I'm going to buy the market, I'm going to position myself to be long, they likely bought stocks yesterday. And everyone else who's not fully sure that Trump's going to attack aggressively, they probably didn't sell because, maybe they're afraid of the potential V-shape, but they also didn't buy. And so I think you have a lot of money that stayed on the sidelines yesterday, kind of scared of what's going to happen, or at least just more cautious, even if they're cautiously optimistic. And as a result, you have the lowest volume you saw in over a year. S&P now is down about 0.44%. And today I'm going to be very curious to see, can we get above 36 million shares, or is it going to be the second lowest day of volume in a year where people are just saying, you know what, I'm going to let this play out before I decide to actually put more money into the market. Trump was at a press conference yesterday talking about the Iran war. Here's a couple highlights of it. And this is one of the main things he said when asked if he will be attacking civilian infrastructure.
Said that very little is off limits in Iran as far as targeting, including power plants, bridges. You've mentioned those.
Very little is off limits.
Are there certain kinds of civilian targets, though? I'm thinking schools,
I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to tell you that. We have a plan because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen. We may even get involved with helping them rebuild their nation. And you know what? If that's the case, the last thing we want to do is start with power plants, which are among the most expensive thing, and bridges. You saw the bridge one. We were very close to a deal. And then I got a call from Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Kushner, and JD saying, I think they're breaking the deal. I said, tell them that's okay. Don't worry about it. But tell them to look out their window and watch. And within 45 minutes, I gave the order to knock out the biggest bridge. I gave the order, knock out the biggest bridge in, I believe, the Middle East, but the biggest bridge in Iran. And within 10 minutes after I gave that order, that bridge was over. So do I want to do that? No. Do I want to destroy their infrastructure? No. It will take them 100 years to rebuild. Right now, if we left today, it would take them 20 years to rebuild their country, and it would never be as good as it was.
The question is, do you believe the president here when he says that he is getting a lot more serious about trying to attack? And, we have some reporting today by Axios that I also think is pretty interesting. So let me pull this up right here as my camera starts to get a little weird. So let me pull this up right here. Axios had an interesting report this morning. So first of all, before I get to that Axios report, the Qatari foreign minister spokesperson said today, we are close to the point where the situation in the region could spiral out of control. So you had that coming from the Qatari foreign minister. And then you had Axios today reporting, quote, the president is the most bloodthirsty individual, like a mad dog, according to a U.S. official. Hegseth and Rubio sound like doves compared to the president, from the same official. And then Trump has been asking his advisors and confidants, quote, what do you think about Infrastructure Day, aka today? So, I mean, you've got Axios with these leaks that they've been getting from all these different U.S. officials, kind of telling them the president here is obviously very serious. And based on that clip that we just watched, I mean, either you believe him or you don't, but based on then this tweet where he's talking about an end of destruction to an entire civilization, a whole civilization will die tonight, it makes you think he's more serious than not. And if he is serious, I don't know how stocks can be bought in this environment in any meaningful capacity, because I mean, if we're hurting the energy infrastructure, if we're bombing Karg Island, if we're putting ground troops in the region, which I would imagine you kind of would have to if you have these many attacks, if the Iranians still don't capitulate, oil's just going to go up. Where's crude right now? It was up yesterday. We are 115. That's the highest we've been in the past couple of weeks. 120 was the absolute high for the year. I mean, it really didn't make sense yesterday for crude to still be at 110, 112, and for the market to be up, which explains kind of the low volume potentially factoring into why we were green. And again, it's very weird to be excited to buy Broadcom based on the Anthropic update yesterday, if this war is the overhang, right? Like, doesn't mean Broadcom's not going to be a good bet in the next couple of years, but in the next couple of months, obviously it's a little tough, because if this war lasts for a long period of time, which it doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon based on these Trump tweets, then a lot of the fundamentals potentially go to the wayside. So it's one of those things where I don't even know what to say. I mean, today is the day. We either get a legit retracement from Trump where he does an extension of a deadline, and there was, Axios again did report this morning that already officials are saying that there will be a level of delay on this extension, or an extension on this attack that Trump has been talking about. But again, then you have Trump saying there will be death to a whole civilization tonight, which begs the question, like, will there actually be any level of meaningful delay? Axios also reported that 45-day ceasefire was potentially in play. That didn't end up happening. The Iranians did respond yesterday to the United States proposal. They had 10 points. I'm not going to read all 10 points that are on the screen right here, but the gist of it is essentially they want a permanent end to the war. They want to end regional fighting. They want to charge about $2 million per ship that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which would be a new fee that they would be imposing on everyone who goes to the Strait, which would give them roughly $300 million a day, which would be a lot of money for the Iranians. And speaking of money, they want the U.S. to lift all sanctions. Obviously, this is not possible. I would imagine the U.S. is not going to lift all their sanctions, because then the regime that they said is the most evil regime on the planet that is enriching nuclear weapons is just going to have more money to be able to do whatever they want. And then number two, if you don't get any confirmation by the Iranians that they're going to get rid of the nukes, or that they're going to take an end to their enrichment program, which theoretically you would imagine they can negotiate stopping their nukes to get billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of relief by getting rid of those sanctions. But if that's not what they're up for, then there's no way this deal is going to happen. I mean, like, it's a good thing that they're talking. I will say that. One side sends a proposal, the other side sends a proposal. Both sides are kind of out of touch, but at least there's some level of communication that's happening. But if the communication leads to nowhere, which is what I think the market potentially is starting to price in, that's why oil is going up to the 115s here, then Trump's going to attack. And I think that tweet is also, I mean, notice what he says right here. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. So either they've fully closed diplomatic channels, either Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are not able to be effective intermediaries. Trump did say yesterday that the negotiations are going very well, and he was happy that the Iranians took a significant step in at least responding with their 10-point proposal, even if he didn't agree with the 10-point proposal. But, the question is going to be, how much does this lead to any meaningful type of deal? Here's Trump yesterday speaking on their 10-point counterproposal.
It's an easy question. The answer is yes, but you'll have to.
What do you think is the latest proposal?
They've made a proposal, and it's a significant proposal. It's a significant step. It's not good enough, but it's a very significant step.
It's not good enough, but it's a very significant step. So on one hand, you have the president saying, yeah, the proposal's not good, but it's like worth, listening to. And then on the other hand, you have him saying a whole civilization will die tonight. Either he's being massively hyperbolic on this post and he's building up all of the excitement to eventually not follow through, which we've seen happen over and over again, or he's legit trying to attack. And I think by tonight, we'll have a better understanding of this. Fox News senior U.S. official says, we are absolutely in touch with Iran. The talks have been positive. If we get lucky, we will have something by the end of the day. Fox News headline, U.S.-Iran talks have been, quote, positive. We'll meet Trump's deadline, quote, if we get lucky, as per a senior official later today. So that begs the question. I will put the poll in the chat right here. And I am very curious what people think. Does Trump attack tonight? Simple, yes or no. Does he actually launch a full-scale attack, or does he pull back, or is it a small little, if you click no, it might be a small strike here or there, but it's nothing massive. If you click yes, you're assuming death to an entire civilization tonight, as per the president. And I guess we're going to see, how this ends up playing out. So that's what we got. I did not think 2026 would start off like that. Dude, this is 4 months into the year, and this is what we're discussing. We're going to talk about some more fundamentals and some macro in a second, but man, every day I'm just as tired as much as you guys are tired of covering this war. It is not fun. It's not interesting. It's at this point getting old. One headline goes left, the other headline goes right. But it is what it is. And this is how the market is reacting to everything that is fully playing out. He said it probably will, which means he's likely to do it. Yeah, I mean, now granted, he is really good at building up a lot of suspense. I mean, everyone thought that we were going to have the craziest tariffs in the world back in April of last year. The market fell 30%, and it didn't end up happening. This time, the market has not fallen 30% because I think a lot of institutions are just like, we don't believe he's actually going to go that far. And that's why I think we've even been able to hold from those Monday lows that we had last week. But if he does go that far, then we're probably going back down to those levels. It just doesn't seem, at least based on price action, to say the least, that maybe that's not going to take place. IDF warning, quote, Iranians should stay away from trains until this evening. Israel has also warned it would strike Iranian national infrastructure to cause economic damage to the regime. Okay, so Israel has definitely not stayed away from attacking different types of infrastructure, even though the United States has done it, but not done it at the level that Israel has done it over the past few years, especially in the Middle East. Israel's warning, I think, is actually, one could believe it's even more legit than Trump's, simply because they've done this before. The question is if Israel and the United States work together to attack, quote, national infrastructure as per the IDF, which means, just think about how scary it must be as an Iranian today in that country. Like, you wouldn't think you could leave your house. You wouldn't think you can get on a bus or get on a train or like go to your local store because you just don't know what's going to get hit. And it is very, very scary to think of it from that perspective. But if this is what Israel and the United States are doing, then tonight that might end up taking place. And I guess we're going to see how the market reacts to it, but also not even just the market, how the world ends up reacting to what's going to take place. 8 p.m. tonight. I guess we will see. I would imagine we get more information before 8 p.m. So, we will find out. But yeah, today's going to be an important day. Crude right there at 115.58 as that one continues to go green and it continues to spike back up as it sees more momentum. Again, Axios did report that the U.S. has conducted strikes already on military targets on Karg Island. That is a lot different from attacking civilian and national infrastructure. So throughout the day, we're going to see if we get some more updates on this. What did you guys vote on in the chat? 56% of you say no. All right, so still roughly 50-50, but about 55 say no, he does not attack. 45% say yes, he will attack tonight. All right, those are the major updates on the war. Obviously, we will keep covering it throughout the day, but that's kind of the main stuff that happened. Trump did have that speech. Let me play one more clip from this, specifically speaking about civilian infrastructure. This is what Trump said yesterday when he was asked about it at the press conference.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the question. Deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure violate the Geneva Conventions and international law.
Who are you with?
I'm with the New York Times. Zolan from the New York Times. Are you
failing? Are you concerned? Circulation way down at the New York Times.
Are you concerned that your threat to bomb power plants and bridges amount to
no, not at all. No. I hope I don't have to do it. But again, I just said 47 years they've been negotiating with these people. They're great negotiators. And because they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And if somebody that takes my place someday is weak and ineffective, which possibly that will happen because we had numerous presidents that were weak, ineffective, and afraid of Iran, we're never going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And if you think it's okay for people that are sick of mind, that are tough, smart, and sick, really sick, from a policy standpoint, from a standpoint, any which way you want to say, mentally, these are disturbed people. If you think I'm going to allow them, and powerful and rich, to have a nuclear weapon, you can tell your friends at the New York Times, not going to happen.
And that goes to this Politico headline that we got, and then we'll get into some of the market news. Pentagon's new plans in Iran give Trump a way out of war crime accusations. The Pentagon is expanding a list of Iranian energy sites it can target for attacks to include ones that provide fuel and power to both civilians and the military, a likely workaround if the administration is accused of war crimes for striking basic infrastructure. War planners are revising the list, according to two defense officials, as American and Israeli warplanes search for new targets after 5 weeks of around-the-clock strikes on military sites, and U.S. ground troops surge into the region. The dual-use nature of the targets would make them legitimate, the officials said. So a lot of people that are asking, well, wouldn't this be a war crime? I mean, from a technical definition, yes, unless you can prove that the energy infrastructure that the U.S. and Israel are targeting also provide fuel and power to the military. Now, just because it provides fuel and power to the military and civilians, and that is potentially a loophole to get out of it being a actual, like by definition, war crime, doesn't necessarily mean the global community is going to look at this and be like, oh, that's okay. Or that, quite frankly, the Iranian people, which Trump claimed yesterday, are begging to get bombed. I mean, quite literally, he said they want to get more bombs because they want the regime to be toppled. I'm not sure how many of them are going to be the happiest about that. So, I mean, we're going to have to see throughout the day. We will get a lot more updates. We'll be covering the story. And by tonight, I think we will have a better understanding of how aggressive this ends up becoming, if it ends up becoming that aggressive. S&P 500, 656, down about 0.38% in the pre-markets. NVIDIA's down 1.3%. Adobe's down 0.36%. Meta down 0.5% as well. Okay, let's talk about AI. It's been a while since we've talked about some really big AI headlines. We've had a couple last week, but I think we have the biggest one we've had probably in a month. Ironically, the last one we had to do with the same company. So it is nice to at least see some different news in the market that is rooted in stuff that definitely affects all of us in our portfolios. Anthropic. I don't know if we're bullish enough, guys. And I know we have the war going on, which takes away a lot of the bullishness. But if we forget about the massive macro overhang and we just look intrinsically at what's happening in one of the greatest tech revolutions of all time, Anthropic was doing 19 billion of revenue last month, up from 11 billion, or sorry, up from 14 billion. They had 5 billion of revenue ARR in a month. They are now doing 30 billion, which means they added 11 billion. They more than doubled the amount of revenue that they were doing in ARR since February in 1 month. This is absolutely crazy that they are growing at these levels. I'm seeing Intel right here. We'll get back to this Anthropic thing in a second. Intel's up 3%. Does Intel have a new deal? Intel joins TerraFab project with SpaceX and xAI. All right, that's your deal. Intel announces partnering with SpaceX, xAI, and Tesla on the TerraFab project to help refactor silicon fab technology and scale next generation compute. Again, TerraFab is really cool. Intel up 2% right here. Makes sense for Intel to get some momentum, but they're talking about a terawatt a year, which is 1,000 gigawatts a year. I just don't know if the timeline on that is realistic in any capacity. I mean, you have people projecting it's going to take a decade for them to even build up the ability to get there. So it's good. It makes sense. There's obviously going to be a lot of announcements, especially before the SpaceX IPO, that all these companies are working with Elon to get this up and running. But, it's so hard already to build 1 gigawatt of a data center. The idea that they're going to build 1,000 gigawatts of data center anytime soon, again, just seems a little unlikely. Granted, it does bring up the question, Intel's worth $250 billion. Is there a world in which SpaceX just buys Intel, incorporates them into the company, and then boom, they have their vertical integration when it comes to chip fabs right there? I mean, who knows? I don't know if the United States would allow it because Intel's kind of become a little bit of a national security sort of like asset. But yeah, that is your announcement right there. That's why that stock is getting a 2% move in the pre-market. Back to Anthropic. So again, this is absolutely crazy. And I think, they added 11 billion of ARR in 1 month. We barely have agents in the enterprise. We barely have people even using an LLM. I mean, if you ask like 100 of your friends and family, I don't know how many of them, maybe 50% say they've actually downloaded multiple LLMs and started using it. Maybe some of them say, oh, I heard about ChatGPT, but ChatGPT only has 900 million weekly active users. There's 8 billion people on the planet. Like, it is not the internet yet. There is a lot of room for this stuff to grow. And if they're already doing, and the monetization of the LLM is the most exciting, whether it's enterprise or consumer, because the fact that they're able to do this quickly means when you do have 4.5 billion people using the product, it's going to be quite incredible. They also shared that over 500 business customers were each spending over 1 million on an annualized basis. Today, that number exceeds 1,000 as per yesterday, doubling in less than 2 months. So the enterprise lock-in and moat that Anthropic has been showing is pretty substantial. Now, mind you, this is also impressive for another 2 reasons. OpenAI just showed that they are doing $2 billion in revenue a month, which is a $24 billion run rate. Anthropic's at 30. I'm sure OpenAI and Anthropic are going to grow that massively by the end of the year. But the point is, Anthropic is beating OpenAI now in terms of actual revenue they're producing. Number 2, this is after the DoD or DOW Department of War controversy, where they were going to be labeled a supply chain risk. It's almost like that didn't even matter. It's like, okay, cool. I mean, enterprises still want to use them. Consumers still want to use them. It's not really showing any massive effect to the brand. Maybe it'll have an impact later, but as of now, Anthropic is growing like an absolute weed. And you're seeing that momentum show up in the numbers. 11 billion of revenue in a month. We've not seen anything like this outside of NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, there's Intel CEO and Elon Musk right there shaking hands. And NVIDIA at the end of the day is a hardware company. So you would imagine as scalable as NVIDIA is, because AI is running the world and compute is needed, you would imagine the software that Anthropic is creating is even more scalable, and the margins eventually will be even better. So this is very exciting. It's also incredibly bullish for NVIDIA, for AMD. I mean, the number that I heard yesterday, and the number that's been rumored for a long time, Sam Altman has talked about this, Dario has talked about this, is that for every additional, I think it's doubling of compute that they can have, they get 3x more revenue. So the more compute they have, the more they can grow. They are only constrained by their capacity to give people more access to tokens. And as a result of that, you are likely seeing that compute is the overall bottleneck. And as a result, the NVIDIAs and AMDs of the world make a lot of sense. Along with that are the Broadcoms of the world. So Anthropic also yesterday expanded their partnership with Google and Broadcom. That's why Broadcom's up 3% for multiple gigawatts of next generation compute. And as you can see right here, they say this groundbreaking partnership with Google and Broadcom is a continuation of our disciplined approach to scaling infrastructure. We are building the capacity necessary to serve the exponential growth we have seen in our customer base, while also enabling Claude to define the frontier of AI development. We are also making our most significant compute commitment to date to keep pace with our unprecedented growth. It seems like there's a world where Anthropic's going to be putting up 100 billion in ARR, and that might happen by the end of this year. I mean, if they're growing at this level, they're going to get to 100 billion ARR either early 2027 or late 2026, which would be crazy because they got valued at $380 billion, which it seems like an absolute steal when you look at what's happening in the private markets. I think they're trading at closer to 750 to 800 billion in the secondaries right now. But this is why, investors piled in as much as they could. And the fact that OpenAI is worth almost double of them, more than double of them, and is not growing as fast, especially in the enterprise, is quite exciting to see. Iranian source to Reuters, we got 3 messages. Number 1, Pakistan continues to convey messages, but the U.S. has not changed its tone. Number 2, there are no negotiations with the U.S., which wants Iran to surrender under pressure. Number 3, flexibility will be shown when we see flexibility from the U.S. side. Flexibility will be shown when we see flexibility from the U.S. side. See, it's messages like that that make you think there will be some level of a, not even deal, but like agreement reached tonight, even if it's for a pause of attacks, when the Iranians are saying, look, we're ready to be flexible, but we need the U.S. to be flexible. I mean, Trump has always been willing to be flexible when it comes to actually getting a deal done. So you see stuff like this and you think, all right, there's maybe some level of a chance that it's not going to be as aggressive tonight, and Trump is hyping it up, but he's not actually going to follow through. But then you have other, concerns about, is he just getting tired of this game and he wants to legit attack and, show them who has the ultimate leverage here. Another quote from the Iranian source to Reuters: if the U.S. attacks Iran's power plants, the entire region and Saudi Arabia will fall into complete darkness. Second thing they said, what the U.S. wants is the reopening of the Hormuz Strait. Iran will not open it in exchange for, quote, empty promises. Iran will not open it in exchange for empty promises. It's not a game. Okay, so for the people that's saying it's not a game, remember that Trump has extended this deadline 3 times already. So, when you say, well, Trump is serious this time, it's like, well, the past 3 times he wasn't serious, and maybe this time he is serious, maybe. But the point is, you can't blame people for thinking maybe he's not going to be serious, because he was supposed to do this 3 times ago. And so if he was supposed to do this 3 times ago, it brings up the question of like, okay, is this an empty promise, or is he legit trying to do this? And right now, I don't think we fully know. The other thing about them bombing the Iranian infrastructure is, and this is where I think it could become incredibly counterproductive, and I think Trump knows this, is Iran has already promised to bomb more Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabian refineries, which is only going to put more of a strain on oil prices. So it's like, if Trump really does attack and the Iranians have their drones and missiles already aimed at Saudi Arabian refineries, which they have been no stranger to hit. I mean, over the past couple of weeks, they've hit many of those. And Qatar's Ministry of Defense came out yesterday and expressed how not only upset, but scared they are that this continues to get worse. Then attacking civilian infrastructure in Iran, which would leave civilians with no energy and maybe it hurts the military as well. If the Iranians are still able to get up drones and missiles in these proxy wars, that's only going to bite the United States back in the ass if oil prices continue to spike. So I think there's a lot of questions on if Trump is actually going to follow through on this tonight. Obviously, in a few hours, we're probably going to know. Maybe it's a small strike to send a point, but if it's a small strike to send a point and the Iranians don't get the point because the attack was relatively small, like he has done in the past, then maybe that's not going to be what forces them to open the strait. At this point, I don't know what could get them to force them to open the strait, because, for the past month and a half, nothing has got them to open the strait. So I don't know. Time will tell, and we will see what ends up happening. But as of now, we are seeing a pretty ugly dismissal of how this is all playing out. S&P 500 right there, 656. And it makes the argument about, discussing the Anthropic momentum as not as important, because, Anthropic's growing, but it's like, when is the market actually going to care? And if the market did care, you would imagine NVIDIA would be way higher than it is today, because they are going to get so much demand. Same thing with Broadcom, Google, etc. But, as of now, it's not fully playing out. By the way, shout out to Google. They started building custom TPUs 10 years ago, back in 2012. So the reason they are getting these contracts right now and becoming essentially a chip play alongside NVIDIA without having Anthropic go to NVIDIA is because they've been working on TPUs for a very long time. In fact, the creator of the TPU, Jonathan Ross, ended up creating Grok, which ended up getting acquired by NVIDIA. So there's a deep history of Google being able to work on these advanced chips, and that's why Broadcom is able to get these deals. All right, a couple other headlines. We've got 10 minutes until this market opens. The poll is 50-50 right now. So again, it seems like a lot of people just don't believe this is going to happen, but a lot of people also do believe that this is going to happen. And I guess throughout the day, we're going to find out. Last thing on Anthropic real quick, which actually goes to OpenAI. So Joanne Zhang is leaving OpenAI, and you might not know who Joanne Zhang is. She put out this long message yesterday about how she's leaving OpenAI. There's nothing that interesting in it other than she's leaving. I don't know why she's leaving. She didn't really explain why she's leaving. She just said how thankful she is. But this lady is the woman who invented model behavior and gave GPT-4o its personality, which was a pivotal part of developing that last model. And now she's leaving after 4.5 years. Either she got super rich because they just had a liquidity event and she's leaving because, you know, she's super rich, or maybe something is happening in OpenAI. We had that article yesterday that came out about Sam Altman's trustworthiness by the New Yorker. And, you know, you've seen a lot of people leave. Multiple co-founders have left OpenAI, although they're growing. Anthropic's growing faster. I mean, it would be kind of crazy if she ends up joining Anthropic. You are seeing some more high-profile people leave the company. And although I think the company will be fine, it is interesting to see that Anthropic is growing like crazy. You're not having these many high-profile exits. Whereas OpenAI, it's almost like every other week you're seeing those exits. And I guess we're going to see how that affects OpenAI long term. Also, the AI headline here, I think, is also really interesting in the context of what's going on in other tech companies. So Meta, people, I think, have heard of this term called looks maxing, potentially. It's become a little bit of a meme where you take the thing you're doing plus the word maxing and you put it together. And it's like, oh, I'm looks maxing, which is like I'm trying to become more physically attractive. Or I don't know, there's some other ones that I've heard where you attach that plus maxing. Well, Meta employees are token maxing, apparently, and they're competing on an internal leaderboard inside of Meta called Cloudonomics for status as a token legend. This is the nerdiest thing ever, but those employees are probably going to get filthy rich. Over a recent 30-day period, apparently, the total usage, as per the information, on a dashboard inside of Meta topped 60 trillion tokens. My portfolio is gain lossing. That is, yep, that is, that is correct. This is Gen Z brain rot. This is indeed Gen Z brain rot. But the point is, Meta is trying to actually develop meaningful models. The headline yesterday was that their first open source model under Alexander Wang, who's like the new head of AI, is going to be released very soon. I don't think that's going to be the avocado model, but it might be. It might be a different version of it. And so the market is paying a lot of attention, given Meta stock went from 750 down to almost below 500, on what the hell is Meta going to do? Are they actually going to put out some models that are reasonable enough to get the street excited, or do we have to rely on the advertising business being the only basis of growth? And right now, the advertising business, quite frankly, is the only basis of growth, which is why I think the stock has been so depressed this year. Even though they're growing like crazy, they're just not growing in the way the market wants them to grow. Amid is grinder maxing. Okay, that's crazy. So definitely should keep an eye on Meta, as obviously the stock is cheap, but the question is, you know, do they get out of the narrative that they were stuck in over the past 15 months? Also, by the way, this is a quick little chart on Anthropic. 1 billion to 30 billion in 15 months. January 2025, they were doing $1 billion in ARR. April 2026, they're doing 30 billion. So once again, just an absolutely crazy way to see how that company has grown. We are bag holder maxing together. Yes, that is correct. We are also bag holder maxing until this war hopefully comes to an end. Tax refund update. So there will be 63 million refunds this year. Let me know in the chat if you've already filed your taxes. I literally filed it yesterday and I will be paying pretty soon. But 63 million refunds versus 61.6. The cumulative dollar amount is 222 billion in refunds versus 195 billion. And the average refund is going to be 11% larger, 3,500 versus 3,100. So, you know, some people here have probably got a refund. Some people have maybe never gotten a refund. But if you do get a refund, it should be 11% larger. It might not be exactly 3,500, but it should be relatively, you know, that's the number that's been rumored, about 10 to 12% higher. The question is going to be, is the cost of oil going to eat into the refund? The refund is supposed to be a massive form of stimulus. We are going to get a CPI on Friday, and the expectation is 3.4%. If people have more money, and the jobs data wasn't that bad, if you trust it, the jobs data is relatively okay. People have jobs, people have money, people are spending, and then the price of everything goes up because inflation goes up because of oil, then it's going to have a moot impact in terms of the stimulus that Trump is hoping the big, beautiful bill will be able to cause, which once again is just like everywhere you go, it goes back to the Iran war. And either you agree with it from a political perspective and believe that all of this stuff is necessary, but if it's purely economic, well, the implications of it, just based on oil going up, as that's one of the only major economic implications, that is a detriment to not only inflation, but also the ability for people to actually get the stimulus needed from the big, beautiful bill. So although we have those tax refunds coming, the question is going to be how effective are they going to be as they as they get into the system itself. See, a decent amount of people said they already filed. Decent amount of people already saying they are not getting a refund. Yeah, most people here do not get a refund. That's kind of what I expected. It is what it is, right? You get to live in this country, you got to pay your taxes. That's the only way through, to be honest. I do recommend, again, if you are a self-employed person, look into a solo 401k. Now, obviously, if you have a W-2 and you don't have a single person LLC income, you can't do that. But the solo 401k is one of the best ways to at least write off a little bit more in taxes. But it does require, having your own LLC to make that happen. It is great. Except the rich. It is a good point. The way to avoid seriously getting screwed by taxes in this country is to own a business, because you just get so many write-offs. The people that pay the most taxes are the people in the middle. I think it's out of the 6 trillion, almost 2.8 of that 6 trillion that we collect every year is primarily W-2 workers, right? People who have a job. So you have your payroll taxes, then you have income taxes. Corporate taxes is only a couple $100 billion. Corporate taxes is not a lot of money, because the corporations is, this is how it's been for the past 50 years. The corporations are assumed to being able to provide the jobs, the products, and the services, so they get all the tax breaks, whereas the employees end up having to pay the majority of taxes. So, if you are an employee, obviously the taxes hit a bit harder. That's true in most countries. Business is usually a major fact. Yeah. And obviously it's hard to start a business, which is the whole point for why there's a tax break, but it is one of the ways to not get hit the hardest by taxes. All right, last couple minutes until we get into the market open. The HIMS CFO sold 75% of his shares. I don't cover HIMS that in depth. I don't know that much about the company in general. I do know the stock is down 75%. And the guy apparently owned 319,000 shares, and now he's selling 240,000 out of those 319,000 shares. I don't think insider selling is that big of a deal. I think it's more noise than signal, but 75% of your stake. I mean, if Vlad came out yesterday, he has 50 million shares and sold 75 because he sold 40 million shares. I'd be like, what's going on, Vlad? Are you not bullish? I get the stock's going through a rough period right now, but sell 75% of your stake is a little aggressive. So unless there's some package for him to get a better compensation package, which was not shown in the filing yesterday, that's a pretty, especially, I don't know if HIMS has bottomed, but I mean, this thing is down a lot. It was at 70, now it's at 20. So I don't know. For him to be selling that much is a little weird, but yeah, you got 1999 right there on HIMS. That's down about 1.3%. And we're going to see what happens. Fun Extreme, thank you for the super chat. I generate close to about 10 million per year in gross revenue. This year I paid 1,800 in taxes. Well, I would imagine that the expenses on that gross revenue are quite large. And that, again, is the beauty. I mean, this is why owning a business is a life hack, because if you own the business, you don't actually pay the taxes because there's usually not that much profit on the business, but you have equity in the business, so they can get a loan against the equity of your business. The bank is like, oh, how much is your business worth? 10 million. The bank's like, okay, we'll give you 5 million, and then you never have to pay the taxes. I mean, that is the entire system of this country when it comes to taxes. So, I mean, a lot of people have utilized that before. All right, Tuesday, April 7th. Today is the day that Trump is talking about a tax. In the next 15 seconds, we are going to see how much volume comes into the S&P 500 and if the market is ready to deal with a potential massive strike in Iran, or if the market thinks it is not actually going to happen. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Tuesday, April 7th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is once again open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Someone said mute maxing. That's crazy. That is crazy. 656 on the S&P. We open down 0.34%. Nothing too crazy from what we saw in the pre-markets. Broadcom, 4% up, 3.6%. That is green. NVIDIA recovering a bit from the lows of the pre-market. We are 174.80. We're now at 175.94, so not too bad, at least so far in NVIDIA. KC, that's up a little bit. They got added to the S&P 500 yesterday. Adobe 243, that's flat. Dow Jones, UNH had a big move yesterday. That's one of the largest components in the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones is red. UNH is up 9%. Again, UNH deserves it. They had a massive re-rating in terms of the rates that they can charge from 0% to 200 to 2.48%, 248 basis points of an increase, which is why that's getting momentum. All the healthcare stocks should be getting a bid. If you are long anything in healthcare, especially UNH, I mean, yesterday was a really good piece of news. So I would be surprised if this one actually retraces back to 280. Just functionally, their EPS targets should be higher. And so hopefully that at least keeps it above 300. Netflix, 99.27. That's green. Affirm is down. Seagate's down. Western Digital is down. We'll talk about Samsung in a second. Samsung did some pre-earnings disclosures. And my goodness, the level of momentum inside of these memory names is absolutely crazy. It really makes you think Micron is one of the most undervalued stocks in the market if they can overcome the super cycle memory cyclicality narrative. But yeah, it was pretty aggressive. The street expected Samsung to report 39 trillion won in operating profit, the South Korean currency. Samsung did 57 trillion. That is $37.8 billion. So you're definitely seeing some momentum for the memory names. Nebius is down 0.5%. CoreWeave is down 0.5%. IREN is down 3%. MicroStrategy down 1%. Tesla 347. Tesla getting hit right here. This thing was at basically 405 for the majority of February, and it is getting smacked now, down 1.5%. Oscar's up 2.74. Blue Owl is down. Snapchat, or Blue Owl is slightly green. Snapchat 482. That's up 2.4%. Lumentum is up a little bit. ServiceNow is up a little bit. Bloom Energy is up 1.3%. Qualcomm is down. Where is Apple? I triggered a lot of people yesterday on X asking if Apple is one of the best AI plays. Apple down 2% right here. A lot of people said no, but there were a few people that said, you know what? I think Apple actually is one of the better AI plays that are out there. Meta 569, losing 570. That is down. Where is HIMS? That is down another 2.4%. Bitcoin at 68,000. NVIDIA 175. Where is Hoodie? We are at 68.53, down about 1.73%. Palantir 147.71. Palantir right there, basically flat on the day. S&P is 655. We touched 660 in the pre-markets for a little bit. Yesterday, we were basically at this level, so we've pretty much eliminated all the gains from yesterday. The question is, do we actually lose the 650s? And that would put us at a new level for this week, at least on the low side. Broadcom still up 3%. Broadcom deserves it. Where is the lab of rockets? She is going down 1.3%. Again, the SpaceX IPO is kind of the major catalyst for all the space names. Question is the macro going to even be friendly enough for SpaceX to IPO? Oh, by the way, speaking of the SpaceX IPO, there was another update we got last night, which I also thought was pretty interesting on this. So if I can pull this up right here, basically SpaceX is planning a massive roadshow, and they're going to be having a retail investor event. And that event is going, so they're targeting the IPO in June. They're doing a massive roadshow. 1,500 retail investors will be invited to an event. Not sure where the event is going to be. And the CFO says, quote, retail is going to be a critical part of this and a bigger part than any IPO in history. Which is exciting. But I also read that as retail is going to be the biggest exit liquidity event we've had in history. That's also how I read it. And so I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic around the SpaceX IPO. But like to invite 1,500 retail investors to tweet and make videos about how much they love a $2 trillion company doing $15 billion in revenue. I don't know, dude. It just there's something about my spidey senses that are like, this is a little weird. It's a little liquidity maxing, right? It's a little weird. Okay, maybe the IPO goes great. Maybe it goes to $3 trillion. But my goodness, dude, Anthropic's doing $30 billion in revenue. They're valued at $380 billion. SpaceX is doing 15, and you can't tell me SpaceX has all this potential and all this. It's like, sure, but the growth's not there. They're expected to do $40 billion by 2030. That's like a 20% CAGR over the next 5 years. That's not massive growth. At the end of the day, it's still a stock. As much as it's an idea of a company, it's still a stock that is somewhat going to be valued on what they produce. And unless the retail hype is that big that it can sustain that multiple for the rest of time, then okay. But if it doesn't, it might be a little ugly. Affirm right there. That's also down 1.26%. UNH is moving. Shout out to everyone with UNH. I know it's been an ugly hold for the majority of the year. And, theoretically, this thing is still very undervalued, given it was at 350 in January, but 600 a year ago. At least it had a good update today, which is helping them. admit your hating is maximizing today. I really don't think I'm hating on SpaceX when I say this. Like, I know some people are emotionally attached to it, but I mean, we're looking at it objectively. I don't think it's hate to be like, look, this thing feels expensive. The good thing about a market is it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the market thinks, and people can express how much they love it by buying it. And if it goes up, then it might end up being a good buy. Next decade, that's a 6% move. That's also green. So you're getting some love right there on next decade. How about VG? That is also up 4%. VG and Next is also green on the day. Where is WTI? Crude is at 115 still. I wonder when this breaks 120. I think that's what a lot of the oil folks are waiting for, because that was the high, what was it, 3 weeks ago. Chevron, all-time high, again, 1.82%. That is green, 1.82% once again. CLS, Celestica, is also up 2.8% on the day. They were down a couple weeks ago. S&P still 655, Pouncer 147. We did get some macro data this morning, and the macro data was durable goods came in at negative 1.4 versus negative 1.1. So it was a miss on durable goods. Yesterday, the data was also not the best when it came to ISM services. We've not really been getting good data outside of the non-farm payrolls, which, again, who believes that we actually added 200,000 jobs? I mean, maybe, but if you don't think that happened, then, the labor market might not be in the best situation. Wow, State Street is following BlackRock with filing for a NASDAQ 100 ETF, another challenger to QQQ. All these institutions are going after the Qs. And you know why I think they're going after it? We talked about BlackRock yesterday coming out with their own version of it. I think because they realize that Anthropic and SpaceX and OpenAI, like the idea of investing in tech is only going to get juicier and juicier over the next decade. And they probably think the S&P is filled with a lot of junk, which quite frankly it is. The S&P 500 is filled with a lot of junk. And so are the QQQs. So maybe if you build an alternative version of that is more AI-centric and focused, it's going to be more volatile, but you're also going to have a lot more inflows on it. These are the year-to-date inflows. SPYM, which we actually talked about yesterday, 30 billion year-to-date. So it's had some good inflows. VOO is the number one with 31.9 billion year-to-date. As you can see, ETFs are still raking in a lot of momentum and bringing a lot of dollars still in. Yeah, that's a good point. The Qs have a lot of software in it. That's a good point. And software, as of now, is dead. So that's also been what's holding the Qs back. Also, the S&P has a bunch of these ServiceNows, Adobe's, Salesforces of the world. Nike's still going down. Is this thing about to lose 43? Another 2%. Red on the day. Another 2%. Again, Intel partnering with SpaceX. That was the big announcement today. Intel up 5% right here. Say what you want about Intel, but there has been plenty of catalysts, whether it's Trump investing, Jensen investing. Now you have SpaceX, who's likely going to be either investing or providing them a lot of capital to support their operations. I mean, there's just been plenty of ways for Intel to benefit. Wow, take a look at this. This is crazy. A human chain has been formed on a bridge in Iran. This is from Iranian state media. So this video came out from them just 10 minutes ago at 9:29. Wow. I mean, I would imagine it's going to be pretty hard to bomb a bridge with thousands of civilians on it. And, not everyone in Iran hates the regime. There's a lot of people that do. That's pretty obvious. But there's a lot of people that also don't. And maybe this is their way of protesting the United States. Today is going to be very volatile. I mean, I would imagine you're going to see a lot more of that stuff that ends up playing out through today. 655. You have about 5 million shares of volume on the S&P. Even if they're being paid to do that, guys, they're still civilians on the bridge, whether they're being paid or not. I don't know if Trump would want to bomb a bridge with that many people on it. 655 on the S&P. You're seeing 5 million shares of volume, so it's not a ton of volume. I wonder if we end up, most of the volume happens from 9:30 to 10. For those that don't know, most of the volume in the market actually happens from 9:30 to 10. There are pockets of volume throughout the rest of the day. This is why day traders take 9:30 to 10 so seriously, because those 30 minutes is where you get the move and you have enough volume to actually be able to make more trades. So we should see a lot more volume coming in if today is going to be a more eventful day, or if it ends up flatlining like yesterday. Yesterday was Easter, so maybe that also had an impact on it as well. but we are going to see if that takes place. Nebius, is that still green? Where is the VIX today? Nebius is at 113. Okay, that is green. The VIX, where are we at? Again, the covered call continues to be one of the best. The VIX is up 7%. The covered call continues to be one of the best tools this year. I mean, you had 2 green days in a row. You had a couple green days yesterday, and then today you're giving back a lot of that momentum as we're seeing things come down. Apple, I don't know why Apple's down 3%, but Apple is down 3%. Now, Apple is down the least out of all the Mac 7s this year, which is the market's way of, I guess, saying that the CapEx spend that Apple's not doing is productive, and we think they're eventually going to be able to monetize this stuff. But nonetheless, it is still red for the year. The other ones are just red a bit more. I don't see a specific headline on Apple, but Apple doesn't fall 3% that easily without there being a headline. I don't see the headline, but it is down 3%. Is this the lowest it's been all year? Let's see. This is, no, 243 it hit back in January. I mean, it wouldn't be too crazy to see it back at 240. It might be a bit more attractive right there if we get there. Apple's foldable iPhone faces engineering issues, potential shipment delays as per Nikkei Asia. That might be the headline. I can't say I'm surprised. I think the foldable phone is not going to work. Reuters, Apple's first foldable phone is facing engineering issues that could delay mass production. Yeah, see, this is the problem with Apple. It's like at the end of the day, the hardware part of the business is what the street cares about the most, because they haven't shown that the AI part of the business, aka Siri, and monetizing it is worthy of getting attention. So, and it trades at a premium multiple, which means if there's any level of problems in the overall hardware space of the business, which I think there's many, I don't think they really have the next killer product, but I think that AI Siri might have some potential. It's just Apple doesn't talk about it. Like at WWDC, which is in 2 months, if they don't introduce, Nebius right there, 114, high of day, if they don't introduce anything around AI, I mean, like, what are we doing here? It's been 3 years, and the most we got are generative emojis that nobody uses. So I think WWDC is going to be important, and if there's not an advanced version of Siri there, then I don't know what to get super excited about here. Yeah, I haven't bought the stock yet, but I'll probably be buying another Apple product soon. That's the crazy thing. It's like, you think that's enough for it to have a moat, but like ultimately they need to show that they can win in a world. And they barely spent anything on CapEx. So like, if they actually release one of the best AI products that's out there, and I think it's like somewhat of a personal agent, they already have 2 billion devices, that's the route to monetize. But they just have not done that yet. Palantir right there, 146.90, and then Robinhood, 67.90. Where is Microsoft? This one has still been stuck in the gutter. 370, down 30% this year. Microsoft is still down. And Yahoo, today Israel targeted railways and bridges in Iran. Okay, so you have confirmation from Netanyahu. We already had reporting a couple hours ago that the U.S. and Israel did attack a few bridges. And today he's confirming that again. Today Israel targeted railways and bridges in Iran. Yeah, I mean, if this thing continues to get more intense by the end of the day, obviously it is not going to be the best. Again, that Reuters report is that Apple's first foldable phone is facing engineering issues. That's why that stock is down. And then Netanyahu, quote, today Israel targeted railways and bridges in Iran. Netanyahu also said, we will continue to strike the regime in Iran with even greater force. We will continue to strike the regime in Iran with even greater force. That is your quote from Netanyahu. Well, it doesn't seem like he's waiting for Trump here to continue striking. I think we'll know in a few hours. I don't think we're going to have to wait till 8 p.m. to see exactly what's going on here. Like, I don't literally think at 7:59 Trump is going to, like, what time? 8 p.m. Eastern in Iran is 4:30 a.m. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be that sophisticated in terms of the literal moment of time, but I guess we're going to see S&P 654 575 as that one continues to get hit. We have a couple of clips from some of these representatives that went on today to talk about what's happening from Trump. This is, let me pull this up right here. This is Congressman Mike Lawler, who is a Republican from New York. Here's what he had to say about what Trump said this morning.
Okay, do you think Congress should have a vote if the United States is going to make a whole civilization die?
Again, John, you are parsing here. The fact is, we're talking about energy and civilian infrastructure. If you look at the role Congress has had a vote, and Congress rejected the push by Democrats, many of whom have previously said that this regime needed to go, many of whom have said this regime could not possess a nuclear weapon. Congress rejected the unilateral and immediate withdrawal. So Congress has already taken action. The president is within his legal authorities to conduct this war. He has taken action to obliterate Iran's ballistic missiles program, their naval fleet. The issue remaining really, is with regard to the Strait of Hormuz and the enriched uranium that is hardened, as you pointed out. So the question is the regime, the remaining remnants of this regime, willing to negotiate in good faith or not? That is what is at stake over the next 11 plus hours.
Congressman Mike Lawler from New York. I wasn't parsing, I was quoting, but I appreciate you being with us. Thank you very much for your time.
I think even a lot of Trump's colleagues in Congress don't really believe an entire civilization will be destroyed. But then again, that is what Trump literally tweeted this morning, right? So it's a question of how much do you think he's not necessarily saying the truth, or how much do you think he's hyping this up? Meta right there, 570. SPY losing some key levels. 654 has now been touched. Robinhood 67. Rocket Lab 65. That one's down 2.7. NVIDIA 176. That one's actually holding on okay, still down 1%. Adobe 242 is that one is also still red. I feel like the whole civilization stuff is an exaggeration. Well, today we are going to see. And I don't blame anyone for believing that because, Trump threatened to do this type of attack 3 separate times and he's delayed it since then. So maybe it is an exaggeration. But if it's not, obviously the markets are going to price that in and that's not going to be the best. 116 on crude. We are slowly inching up to 120. The VIX is now up 7%. Sorry, 8.5%. S&P actually not doing that bad given the VIX and oil are spiking. I mean, we're only down 0.7, which is ugly, but obviously we were up 3% last week, which kind of cushions a little bit of the pain. If we start getting below 1%, that's going to be bad. Pakistani army, we warned that Iran's continued hostile attacks on Saudi Arabia will close the door to mediation. Pakistani army, Saudi Arabia's patience and rationality despite Iran's provocative behavior are what kept the door of mediation open. Okay, so you got the Pakistanis saying we're talking to the Saudis, and the Saudis have been pretty chill, even though the refineries have been blown up, but they can only be chill for so long. And if Iran continues attacking, essentially, the sort of read between the lines is they're going to join the war. Which I don't know if MBS is that afraid of doing. Apple right there falling below 250. Because it's been well documented that he is not a fan of the IRGC. And maybe he takes matters into his own hands and officially deploys military action. Now, I don't think the U.S. necessarily wants him to do that. That's why the U.S. has been doing it for Saudi Arabia for the past decade. But that might be something that ends up playing out. Tesla right there, down 2.7%. Meta is at 570. The other thing about MBS is he's never wanted a nuclear weapon. He's actually been the most calm about a nuclear weapon. He was asked years ago on, should Iran actually get a nuke? And his only argument was, if Iran gets one, we will have to get one. This was back, I think, in 2022. But he's never intrinsically wanted a nuke.
Though Iran gets a nuclear weapon, about them getting a nuclear weapon? when we are concerned of any country getting a nuclear weapon, that's a bad move. And you don't need to get a nuclear weapon because you cannot use it. Even if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, any country use a nuclear weapon, that means they are having a war with the rest of the world. The world cannot see another Hiroshima. If the world see 100,000 people dead, that means you are in a war with the rest of the world. So it's a useless effort to reach a nuclear weapon because you cannot use it. If you use it, you got to have a big fight with the rest of the world.
If they get one, will you?
If they get one, we have to get one.
So that's the scary part about nuclear proliferation, because as a leader of a region, I mean, if one of the closest enemies next to you has a nuke, I mean, that's the whole concept of deterrence. You got to get a nuke as well. But if they don't have one, which the United States has, made sure that South Korea doesn't need to worry about getting a nuke because we're going to protect them, or Saudi Arabia doesn't get a nuke because we're going to protect them because we have the nukes, and obviously the U.S. doesn't want to see other countries proliferate. But if these countries feel they have to take matters into their own hand because they're afraid for their own sovereignty, then, that is where proliferation becomes a lot scarier. Tesla right there, 343. Tesla's fallen off a cliff this week. Absolutely gotten wrecked. I don't really understand why. I mean, I get they got the downgrade yesterday. It's down 5% in the past 5 days, 14% in the past month. But that downgrade didn't say anything new. Maybe it's the delivery numbers, but again, who really buys Tesla on the delivery numbers or sells it on the delivery numbers? So this is kind of weird. I mean, I did see a report yesterday that people are getting ready to sell Tesla to buy SpaceX, which, I mean, there are a lot of people that have held on to Tesla for a very long time, and they've probably up more than 10x, and maybe they think SpaceX is the next opportunity, but I really doubt that level of retail selling is causing this pain. When a stock is this expensive, you don't need a reason. That is fair. It's just, it is Tesla. It's not just a random name. And usually you might see a bit of a reason for the selling. But again, Tesla, they haven't grown earnings in 3 years. It's just, does the market randomly wake up and say, we care now? It's normalized not caring about that stuff. So the fact that it cares today or over the past month is a bit weird. Apple right there, 249. That one is still down. Celestica's up 1.8. BM&R is down 4.3. Western Digital's up a little bit. Seagate is up 0.93 as well. Apple is down based on reports that the foldable phone is likely going to be delayed, which actually is 100% the right reason for this stock to be down. I mean, Apple has not come out with products that are interesting enough on the AI side or the hardware side. And so if the only thing that was holding them up was excitement over the next foldable phone, which I kind of think is ridiculous in the first place, it makes sense why that's down. Also, I am still on my island that the glasses are a failure across the entire board. I was talking to Chris yesterday in the market close. I literally gave him a pair of Meta Ray-Bans that I was gifted back in December. And he's had it for 4 months now. I'm like, Chris, how much do you use it? And he's like, well, and I'm like, you don't use it, do you? He's like, well, one day I'll be able to go to a restaurant and look at the menu, and then the thing will be able to translate the menu. I'm like, you can also take out your phone and just open the camera and translate the menu if you care that deeply, if you're in Japan and you don't know how to read the menu. I don't see the use case at all. And, Chris also mentioned something that I've been talking about for a while, which is that he feels weird wearing it at a Starbucks because people can obviously tell it's a glass, it's a product with a camera in it. And people started looking at him kind of funny because they think they're being recorded, which just from a social perspective, which if you're going to wear glasses outside, it's obviously going to be social in some respect. It's freaking weird. Don't think the glasses are going to work. Robbing it back to 68 pound to 147. So when people say, oh, Meta has the glasses, I'm like, the Meta glasses that have sold like 10, 15 million units are not going to replace the phone. It's definitely not going to be the next level of growth for Meta. At least not in my opinion. Trump administration is planning to cut the budget for U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency by at least $707 million by 2027. By 2027. Okay, that's interesting because it looks like he's going to be increasing the defense budget by $5 trillion. The proposed budget cut was released late last week as a part of the budget proposal that includes the privatization of airport security. They're going to try to privatize airport security? Huh. Interesting. That, did not know that. This is from Bloomberg just now. Or sorry, this is from TechCrunch. Trump administration planning to cut $707 million in U.S. cybersecurity budgets. I mean, maybe there's a company that came up to him and said, we can do cybersecurity for a lot cheaper than what you're already paying right now. And that money might be reallocated. Big Bear AI. I mean, they do some stuff with airports. So it's not crazy to assume that maybe they will be part of that privatization. That stock down 2% right here. S&P back to 655. Where is Ondas? Where has this one been? 931. That's down 2.3. The drone stocks aren't really getting a lot of momentum, even though, you know, the war has been taking place. Kratos down 5% today. This thing was up yesterday on an upgrade, so this one's getting hit. And then where's Red Cat, which hit 17? Red Cat's now at 1250. So far, a lot of these drone stocks kind of peaked at least in mid-February for now. Okay, what else do we have? What else do we have? What are people doing so far? It's been 27 minutes. Have people bought, sold? I have not touched that 35K that's in my retirement at this point. I don't know if Monday last week was the bottom, and if it's not, there will be a time to allocate that capital effectively. Everything's pretty much red. Healthcare is getting hit pretty hard. Broadcom, the only green name, along with Intel and Arista, that's holding up. A lot of people saying buying AMD. What about Micron? Again, Micron's had a nice recovery, 318 to 370. I know it's not back at 470, but you can't say it hasn't made a move, at least from the absolute lows. The question is just, can they continue getting the street on their side? I see Oracle buys. Chris says, enjoying my cup of coffee. You know, that is definitely one of the good parts about the morning at this point, because portfolio is not doing it. Covered calls are printing. That is fair. SPY puts. I actually was looking at some SPY puts yesterday. I just wanted to see what the premiums look like. It's not that crazy. I mean, now you would have to go deep out of the money. You would have to go to like 5,500, 5,000, which I don't think is really going to happen. But I mean, if it were January 2027, 5,000 S&P puts, you can 3x your money if it actually crashes, which is probably not going to hedge the majority of your long portfolio unless you go in heavy, but it is somewhat a hedge. I just think the premiums, they're still a bit elevated. And, you know, calling for 5,000 on the S&P, I could see 6,000. I could see 5,850, but those premiums are even worse than the 5,000 ones. 5,000 is just, I mean, those Anthropic numbers would have to be completely fake, because at some level, that's going to matter, even with this war happening. I know it doesn't right now, but to assume we get that decimated. What's 20% from here? 650 times 0.2. That'd be 520. I mean, it's close. I mean, 20, but we are already down, I think, 5. So if we did 15% from here, which would be the full 20, that would be 550, which is what I think even Jason's downside target is if we do end up getting hit bad. 654 again on the S&P. See some people saying they're buying Tesla. Are you buying Fly? No, I've heard of this one. This one's up year to date, right? This one, another space name. Year to date, it is up 37%. Yeah, I think just a lot of the space names right now, a lot is contingent on SpaceX. Luna right here, 2238. But I do like Fly. Their fundamentals actually are a bit more attractive than some of the other space ones that are out there. What do you think about Zeta 30, 35 spreads for Jan 2028? Too aggressive? I do not think $35 on Zeta is aggressive at all. Like, that would make it a $8 billion company doing almost $2.5 billion in revenue. It's not that crazy. The problem is, how long is this thing going to last? I mean, if this thing continues to last long, then options are just going to get burned, which is a difficult position to be in. JD Vance, we got a couple clips of him this morning. Let's see what he said as well about the war.
But we feel confident that we can get a response, whether it's positive or negative. We're going to get a response from the Iranians by 8 o'clock tonight. I hope they make the right response, because what we really want is we want a world where oil and gas is flowing freely, where people can afford to heat their homes and cool their homes, where people can afford to transport themselves to work. That's not going to happen if the Iranians are engaged in acts of economic terrorism. So they've got to know we've got tools in our toolkit that we so far haven't decided to use. The President of the United States can decide to use them, and he will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course of conduct. But
here's another clip as well.
And the president's also been very clear that while the Iranians are trying to exact as much economic cost through the Straits of Hormuz, the United States has the ability to extract much greater economic costs on Iran than Iran has on an ability to extract costs on us or on our friends in the world. So I hope that they're smart. The president has set a deadline for about 12 hours from now in the United States. We're going to find out, but there's going to be a lot of negotiation between now and then. And the president's been also.
And then here's the last clip of him today.
And first of all, the United States has largely accomplished its military objectives. There are still some things that we'd like to do, for example, on Iranian ability to manufacture weapons that we'd like to do a little bit more work on militarily. But fundamentally, the military objectives of the United States have been completed. So that means, as the president has said, very shortly, this war is going to conclude. And I think the nature of the conclusion is ultimately up to the Iranians. I think there really are two pathways, and I'm oversimplifying this a little bit, but I think pathway one is where the Iranians decide they're going to be a normal country. They're not going to fund terrorism anymore. They're going to be part of the world system of commerce and exchange. And that's going to mean much better things for them economically. It's going to mean better things for the peace and safety of the world. It's going to mean a lot of good things for a lot of people all over the planet. That's option A. Okay. Option B is if the Iranians don't come to the table and they stay committed to terrorism, to terrorizing their neighbors, not just Israel, but of course their Arab neighbors too, then the economic situation in Iran is going to continue to be very, very bad. And frankly, it will probably get worse. And so what the president has asked his entire team to do, particularly Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, is to figure out what are the contours of a potential deal? What are they willing to do? Because
is it just me, or did Vance say a whole lot of nothing, bro? And is it getting harder and harder to listen to him? Not because he doesn't know how to talk or he's not articulate, but like, I don't think Vance supports this war. It's very obvious if you've kept up with the reporting or just know his history. And so he's having to put on a face to support this war. In fact, Trump even, passive aggressively talked about how Vance and dissent don't support this war. And so he's kind of having to manufacture his approval of this. And in reality, it's like people don't feel, when Trump or Hegseth talks, you can feel their passion for how much they support this thing. For Vance, I don't know if you necessarily feel that. 653 right there on the S&P. Tesla still falling, Rocket Lab falling, Apple falling, Nebius, it was green. It was one of the only green names. And now it is red. He is one of the core people negotiating as per Trump. Him and Rubio are some of the core people negotiating as well. So, he definitely has to be able to effectively talk about this. 111 is what we have right here on Nebius. Atlanta Fed GDP now index falls to 1.3 from 1.64. We're going to get GDP tomorrow for Q1. Goldman has cut the Q1 GDP tracking estimate to 2.7 from 2.9. 2.7 to 2.9. We're probably going to get around that 2.5 to 2.9 range tomorrow, which is good. It is not the 5 to 6% GDP, though, that they were talking about at the end of 2024 or 2025, and we're kind of going to need that to be able to grow out of some of the debt that we have. A Chinese court has rejected Apple's request to invalidate the AI patents for a Chinese AI company, which in 2020 sued the iPhone maker for infringement of its Siri voice assistant. Wow. Okay. So Apple getting hit with their foldable phones potentially not going into production yet. And then you've got a patent case that they have not won. Apple wins a lot of patent cases. This one they are not winning for a Chinese AI company, which they're claiming basically copied Siri. It's funny that Apple's suing companies that copied Siri, but they're not actually improving Siri. That is actually very funny. Apple right there. 249. 249 Dolores. Let's look at software. Software is, we'll look at semis first. Semis is up or red except for Broadcom, Intel, and Dell. Dell's just been on a tear all year. Wow, Micron 364. That's losing some steam. ARM 7% down. That one's losing a lot of the pump it got from the headline of 5xing the revenue 2 weeks ago. Broadcom barely holding on to some of the green. Intel barely holding on to it, but Intel was up a lot yesterday. The Max 7s are all red. The worst of it today is Tesla. It looks like she's about to lose 340. Microsoft loses 370. Nike's also getting hit. Robinhood's getting hit. Vlad's going to be on CNBC in a bit as well. Nike 3% down. Okay, now we are seeing some real red. Now we are seeing some real red. Fubo at least holding on after they revised EBITDA guidance yesterday. It was up 20% yesterday. It's up 5% today. CoreWeave, slightly a little bit of green. Iren is down 5%. Oh, I think we have a new video. Oh my. Okay, this video is not crazy graphic. It's not actually showing the attack, but Israel just said they attacked a bridge, and it looks like this is the video that a civilian took as first aid comes by to get someone who got hit in that bridge attack. Still waiting on multiple videos to confirm this. This was, according to Iran's Mehr news agency, the Yaba Abad Railway Bridge in Karfshan, a central province in Iran, is where the bridge has been hit. The strikes come after the Israeli military issued a warning telling Iranians to avoid using trains for their safety until 9 p.m. local time. Israel did say that earlier this morning. SoFi down 2%. As well. Yeah, I don't see how markets easily flip green when today is the day where, you know, Trump has made all these threats. Whether or not you believe him or not, I don't see how we easily, you know, let go of that volatility. VIX is up 13%, folks, 12.5. So that volatility now is starting to pick up. The market's starting to really understand how aggressive it might become. Here's some more coverage on those Israeli attacks.
Right now, a senior Israeli official confirming to Fox News that the Israelis have started strikes against Iranian rail infrastructure. Remember, earlier today, the Israelis warned civilians to stay off the trains in Iran. They have started to target the bridges of the rail system in Iran as we speak. Additionally, you have these strikes overnight against Karg Island, the largest export facility in Iranian territory, accounting for around 90% of Iran's oil exports. And you have ongoing U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iranian military infrastructure. What we are looking at right now is a staging operation. The United States and Israel are preparing. If a deal is not made, there will be an increase in strikes against the Iranian regime. The president described it as power plant day and bridge day to go after this critical infrastructure inside of Iran. But what's very interesting here, I spoke with a high-ranking source last night, and I asked what happens next if the president orders these strikes. And they said, again, this is the Achilles heel of the regime, targeting energy infrastructure. And what it may actually do is force their hand at the negotiating table. Because, again, the president has time and time again, even before Operation Epic Fury began.
I mean, that is the argument by the Trump administration, which is that if we attack them very hard, we're going to finally gain leverage with the Iranians. So far, the U.S., one could argue, has had zero leverage. I mean, with all the military attacks they've done, I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is not open. So, you know, none of the leverage has manifested into anything material. There's going to be a lot of debate on if attacks, especially on civilian infrastructure today, is going to be the way to gain that leverage. And I guess by tonight, we're going to see if that happens. NVIDIA 174.90 as that one continues to go down. Thanks to Broadcom, it's not all that bad in my portfolio. I bought a little bit of Broadcom at 292. Broadcom's going to be a winner. Like NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom. When you see these Anthropic numbers, again, for those that are just joining, they did 19 billion last month. They're now doing 30 billion in revenue ARR. That is an 11 billion increase in a month, up from 5 billion last month in terms of the rate of growth. I mean, there's just no way these companies are not going to be providing massive levels of compute. The Nebiuses should win, the Irens, the CoreWeaves. I mean, those business models are a little bit different because they have dilution and they're not profitable, but still just the sheer demand, one would argue, for compute should help the entire sector. But when you got a war going on and you've got bridges being hit, I mean, people don't care. People just don't care as aggressively about that. Tesla, are we still falling? Who's buying the Tesla dip? 340. Who's buying here? 340. Is this the name you pick in the midst of the Mag 7 drawdown? Actually, here's a better question. What is the number one Mag 7 you are buying if you are buying the Mag 7? Obviously, you guys know my answer. It's NVIDIA. It's been NVIDIA all year. Amazon is a close second for me, especially knowing their Anthropic stake. I mean, I still feel like Amazon is going to be a massive winner, even if the stock is stuck for now. But is it Tesla for some people? Wow, I see Meta and Microsoft. That's the number one that I'm seeing, the number 1 and 2. Barely seeing any Googles, a little bit of them. Seeing some NVIDIAs, but not a lot. Dude, the problem with doing a poll on this is YouTube only allows 4 choices. So I guess I'll do the only 4 the top 4 that I see. YouTube needs to allow multiple choices. There's no reason why it should be stuck to 4. It's still 50-50, by the way, on does Trump attack. Okay, which Mag 7 are you buying the most? I'm going to put Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla as those are the main ones I see. Blame YouTube for not letting me show the other options. Let's get a little bit more coverage here, and then we will keep going from there.
The sort of weekly number, 26,000 jobs per week, according to their latest sort of hiring pulse. It's a weekly update of the monthly ADP private sector jobs report. But what you need to know here is that it was the 3rd straight week of improvement in hiring. That's a good number. We want to see improvement in hiring, especially amid all the noise and the concerns that employers would be holding back as a result of the war and of the oil spike. So it just adds to evidence, I think, on top of the jobs report, the government report that we got on Friday, on Good Friday, that was good amid some mixed messaging around jobs and what might happen. But I really wanted to dig into the AI story, right? How much is AI impacting the job market? David, I know you focus on this a lot. We all do because we're trying to figure it out.
I mean, it's the most important. It's like there's nothing more important than this.
It's the story.
Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to have any answers or that even things are happening near term. So everybody's just guessing, Sarah, but it's not unimportant.
But what we're starting to get past the guessing is some Wall Street research on just how they're analyzing it. And of course, it comes with the caveats that we're certainly early in the adoption phase. It's hard to tell exactly. You know, we get these announcements. The latest was Crypto.com, based out of Singapore, that they're going to lay off a certain percentage of their workforce because of AI. But we don't know exactly what that means. Is it really because of AI? So let's just start with a Goldman Sachs chart that I found interesting this week. So they look at basically employment with industries with AI augmentation versus industries with AI substitution. And there's a big difference there. Augmentation, the high line, actually shows employment growth. So this is the key to AI, right? If your job can be augmented or helped out by AI, you're seeing better employment trends versus AI substitution. How do they measure this? Well, they look at different AI augmentation occupations, medicine, right? We know that doctors are using AI and for all sorts of tests like colonoscopies. Education, they include in that. They basically added 9,000 to monthly payrolls and lowered the unemployment rate by 0.06. So we're talking about small incremental numbers here, but just
we also saw the increase of software jobs last month in one of the charts that was, more excited about the idea. Tesla right there, 340. SPY losing some key levels, now 652. We are basically down 1% today on the SPY. It was showing that software jobs actually have ticked up in terms of number of job openings, but that doesn't mean the number of people that have been hired in software engineering has ticked up. So, a lot of people are pointing to the fact that, well, look, there's more jobs that are increasing, but that's similar to JOLTS. Just because we have more jobs doesn't mean that people are getting more hired. And as a result of that, you have people concluding the opposite, which is Square, which fired 60% of their, or 40% of their workforce. Amazon, which laid off 30,000 people. Intel, which laid off a bunch of people. UPS, which laid off a bunch of people. You're seeing a lot of these companies say their mid-management, sort of blue-collar jobs have been starting to get laid off as well, along with white-collar jobs. So the interesting thing about this is, and I actually had dinner with someone who did get laid off from Square about 3 weeks ago. And, he didn't really enjoy his job anyway. He's a senior level software engineer. He's been at the company for a while. He wasn't really getting that much out of it life-wise. But his argument was absolutely we were bloated. And I think we covered the story before. Square used an AI product to manage every element of your productivity. So they installed some like AI thing on your company-owned laptop, and every stroke of the keyboard that you engaged in would be put into this model, and then this model would give HR the results of how productive you were as an employee. And he obviously had kind of not cared about his job anymore, so he ended up being incredibly unproductive. And so he was like, yeah, I probably deserve to get fired. But the point is, they were using AI to fire you. And, Jack Dorsey's like, oh, it's not because of AI. It's like, obviously, it has to do with AI. Like, yes, you guys were probably bloated because you hired too much in COVID. And I don't think Jack Dorsey, effectively cares about shareholder value when it comes to Square, which is why it's been a mess. But nonetheless, they used AI. It's dystopian. It does feel dystopian, but also from a company perspective, you can't blame them, right? If they can find a product that immediately tells them what people are we paying a lot of money to that aren't contributing any value to the company, I mean, yeah, they're going to pay for that software. That software is probably going to save them a lot of money in the long term. It's going to tell them exactly what's happening. So it is very interesting to see kind of how AI has impacted software engineers in particular, even if the job postings have gone up as per Goldman Sachs, but that doesn't necessarily reflect that jobs themselves are increasing. 368 on Micron, as that one is still going down. Have you watched Black Mirror? Yes. I haven't seen every episode. Hang the DJ is my favorite episode. It's the only one that I really remember. But it does feel very Black Mirror-esque when you think about it. Unless you work based on commission. Yeah, well, he didn't do sales, right? He did actual engineering. And it was funny because he even admitted, he was like, yeah, I definitely wasn't productive. So it's like, the AI was right about him. But the fact that they used AI to micromanage what you're doing, I mean, this type of stuff is only going to get more prevalent in the corporate workplace if they have the tools to identify what's happening. 568 right there on Meta. New York Times update. The United States and Israel are intensifying attacks in an effort to force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz and reach a ceasefire deal, according to American and Israeli officials with knowledge of the operations, who spoke on the condition of being anonymous to discuss sensitive matters. Rocket Lab down 4, ASTS down 5, Chevron and VG up 3 and up 5, Apple down 4. Apple doesn't fall 4% easily. That one's getting hit. Nike down 3. So this confirms the reporting from Fox News just now, which is that the U.S. and Israel are obviously attacking aggressively. Vlad's on CNBC. Okay, let's pull it up. And let's see what he is saying.
For children. Joining us now for this, when I saw you at the big event a few months ago for the Trump accounts, how does it work? What will you be doing for the rollout of this initiative?
Yeah, so we're going to be the broker and the trustee for the Trump accounts. And what that means is we're helping design the app in concert with the National Design Studio. We're also building the front-end experience. And then we're providing the brokerage functionality. So these are under the hood, very similar to tax advantage brokerage accounts, which is our bread and butter business. So we're going to be powering that aspect of it, as well as providing the customer support functions and the primary interface with customers in partnership with BNY.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday about how it's not just the federal government. Corporations have signed on to contribute for their employees, and philanthropists, and maybe even states. We're going to start to follow some of the discussions among states. What are your expectations as to how big this program could get.
Yeah, I mean, right now, every newborn child will get $1,000 funded by the Treasury into a brokerage account so that they could get ownership into this great country. And on the eve of the 250th anniversary of the nation, I think this is an evolution of the American dream. You know, if you look at the American dream, it used to be about owning real estate and, you know, having a nice house with a white picket fence. I think increasingly that's evolving, and now it's really about buying into American enterprise, and the ability to fund that for every child from the start. I think is an awesome initiative. So the administration, the president, deserves a lot of credit for making this happen. I think being able to execute this and actually put real ownership in the hands of every child, I think it's going to change the world.
I mean, for you, I would assume for your business, I mean, you want young customers, right? You want those 18-year-olds to be invested in the Robinhood platform. How should investors think about what it means for Robinhood as it scales and for your business?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for our mission from the very beginning was democratizing finance for all and getting more people invested in the engine of wealth creation. The greatest engine of wealth creation has been the U.S. stock market. So very mission aligned. In terms of the business, this puts Robinhood in front of the next generation. And this is literally going to be the first investment account for millions of people. So it's really an honor to be able to serve these customers and to work with the government. You know, this is our first experience really working with the government in this way. So we're learning as well. And our aspiration is to make this the best product the government has ever been associated with. So we're really, and I know, with the National Design Studio, they feel the same. And those guys in concert with our team have been cranking through the weekends because, like you mentioned, the government hasn't always had the reputation for rolling out great consumer products. I think this time will be different. And this administration, and in particular with the care towards design, really is approaching it very, very differently than the government has in the past.
Do you get any fees or spreads or anything on these accounts, or is it just a fee from sort of contracting fee from Treasury? How does that work?
Yeah, so for the customers, the accounts will have no account fee. There will be no trading commissions. So these are intended to be, the absolute lowest cost vehicles and ways to get customers invested. Now, there may be in the future management fees through ETFs that are deployed in these accounts, but again, those will be very small. In terms of how we're monetizing, the way it works is we're actually acting as a subcontractor to BNY, and so we have essentially a government subcontracting agreement.
Got it. And I guess we talked a little bit about so the future generation, but what sort of steps do you plan to take to make Robinhood a destination, for multi-generations, and to convert these kids into more active Robinhood users?
Yeah, I mean, right now our focus is just on making sure this program goes really well and the product is amazing, because this is launching on July 4th, and now we're in Financial Literacy Month in April. So there's some content going out around that. I think it's a good opportunity to engage not just young people, but also their parents on the value of compound interest and jumpstarting their financial future. So our focus is on building the best product, and it's not really for us. It's not really a marketing initiative. It's really about how can we do the best possible job at something that's so tightly aligned with our mission.
Finally, we were just talking about that age group. We were just having a whole deep dive into the AI impact on jobs. And one of the sort of higher risk areas we've seen has been this rise in unemployment for college age grads, and whether, automation is killing some of those opportunities in those entry level jobs. Do you have a view on that? That's a core customer for you.
Yeah. I've spoken about this. I actually gave a TED talk about it a couple months ago.
Okay, we don't have to listen to that last answer. Vlad obviously believes that AI is going to increase the amount of jobs. You can listen to his TED talk. He even said that on our podcast. So he does not have the same doomeristic view of this. But look, is it good for HUD stock? Yeah, but even you could tell by Vlad's tone, it's not going to make a difference in the short term. In the long term, this is a good part of the thesis as the market continues to allow or to see Robinhood as one of the sort of de facto players for these new accounts that inevitably will grow their AUC. They're potentially going to get into the credit cards and trading. And like all these young kids are going to grow up with Robinhood. That's the bull case. It just doesn't change anything today. I mean, they get 1.5 million accounts, $1,000 each. Like that doesn't really make a dent for them. So that's why I don't think you're seeing it being priced into HUD at the moment. But over time, obviously, it would be beneficial for them. And obviously with the war going on, that headline is not enough to retrace anything. HUD was 71 yesterday based on this headline, and it's back to 67 on more war headlines. Micron right there at 370, recovering a little bit. S&P up from 652 to 654. Yeah, this is really a decade-long, multi-decade-long journey for HUD. It's great that they're doing this. It's just not going to move the needle, I think, in terms of earnings for this foreseeable future. I didn't know April was National Financial Literacy Month. Did anyone know that? I didn't know that. April is dedicated to empowering individuals with the knowledge and skills required to manage money effectively, reduce debt, and improve long-term financial stability. I had no idea. That was when I was in school, they definitely didn't make April seem that relevant when it comes to financial literacy. This is really the first time I'm finding that out. 653.90 on the S&P. When is Trump speaking? Trump is not scheduled to speak today. At least I don't think so. But 8 p.m. we should probably get more of an update. I mean, J.D. Vance is saying by 8 p.m. the Iranians will negotiate. So, the fact that Vance is saying that as well makes you think, could something happen before 8 p.m. before this plays out? Also, we got another headline from Iran. Iran officially threatens to close the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Quote, if the situation gets out of control, as per Reuters. 4 details. 1, Iran said the entire region and Saudi Arabia will fall into darkness if the U.S. attacks Iran. 2, the IRGC said it would not hesitate to retaliate if the U.S. targets civilian facilities. 3, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait currently accounts for 12% of global seaborne trade. We actually talked about the strait a couple days ago as well. And then 4, you're seeing projections of $150 a barrel for oil from the Iranians if Bab al-Mandeb is shut down, which obviously would, I mean, we get one. Oh, wow. We're at 117. That's the high of debt. We have taken out a lot of levels outside of 120. 120 is the only thing we haven't touched. And we never really officially touched 120 during the day. It was during the futures 3 weeks ago. And then it kind of came crashing back down. So the fact that it's now getting close during trading hours is not the best. Stop with the accent a minute. We know you can pronounce these words correctly. If you think I can pronounce the Bab al-Mandeb, I mean, yesterday the word wasn't bad. Yesterday I rage quit at the end of the stream. I thought this word, chimerical, was chimercial. I didn't know the C and the H made a cuss sound. And then after the show, I was like, oh, chemistry. There is a cuh in the C and H. So I am not saying these words incorrectly for fun. It is my worst fear when I have to read these updates. There's these foreign words that I do not know how to say. State Department, U.S. issues shelter order for all Americans in Bahrain. As per the State Department, U.S. issues shelter order for all Americans in Bahrain. Okay, I mean, every freaking headline says this is going to get worse. And if you fade it here, then you're assuming it's just not, which is understandable given how many times it felt like it would get worse and it didn't. But I mean, the fact that we're only down 0.5% here, you would think we'd be down a lot more if the market really understood how badly it was going to become. S&P only 13 million shares of volume. It's not a lot an hour into this. You should be closer to about 20 million shares. So I do think there's also people that are just not playing the game today. And they're sitting on the sidelines. NVIDIA down 1.5, Palantir down 1.3. Just start coughing when there's a word you can't produce. It's not a bad idea. By the way, for those that missed it yesterday, I found the first stream where I found a bell. It was March 12th, 2022. You don't have to mute because it's going to be a very short bell, but this was me back in the day when Palantir was $11, figuring out that I could ring a bell to open the market.
We're going to see how green and red this goes. 9:30, market open. The market has opened.
It was so bad, dude. It was so bad. So bad. First of all, why do I sound so zesty? Like my voice is fundamentally, like I was watching that stream. I'll link it right here. You guys can watch it if you're curious. My voice sounds ridiculous. Like I sound way zestier than I should. It's almost like I hit puberty in 4 years, even though I had a beard in that video. And then what did I do with the bell? I just like moved it back and forth for a couple seconds. That wasn't even a bell ring. So it was definitely a trip down memory lane seeing the first initiation of the bell. But yeah, things are not the same like they were back then. 342 on Tesla. You sound so nerdy, it's cute. If you guys do watch it and I'm reading out the prices when the market opens, dude, some of these prices, Tesla was like 100, Palantir was $11.40. I mean, some of those prices are just crazy. Really, a bear market is where you build substantial levels of potential wealth if you can find the money to just allocate. And I don't think we're in a bear market right now, and we haven't been in for the past couple of years, but 2022 was that moment. Air Test Systems has earnings after the bell. I know this one's been getting hyped up by a lot of people. 5176. By the way, AXTI, which is another super popular FinTwit name, it fell 20% yesterday because they're diluting the company by 50 million shares, and there's only 52 million shares outstanding. So that's why it was down 20% yesterday. I didn't know they were going to be that aggressive with the dilution. I don't blame them because the stock is up 3,000%. But yeah, if you're buying the dip on this one, just watch out because that dilution hasn't been approved yet. But they're diluting by basically 100%, which feels, a bit aggressive in the context of the share price movement over the past year. Micron 371, Red Cat still down 4%. Google back above 300. The Goog's at least getting a little bit of a bid. White House denies U.S. intention to use nuclear weapons in Iran. Okay, so a lot of people have been theorizing about is the United States going to use a nuclear weapon? I understand why people are theorizing that, because when you see the Trump tweet from this morning, he's talking about a whole civilization dying, going through hell. Like, obviously that stuff can imply a nuke. I do not think they're going to use a nuke. The White House themselves today denying they're going to use a nuke. I think that's going a bit too far, obviously. And no matter how bad things get, I don't think they're pulling out the nuclear option here. I don't think Trump's going to be able to justify that. I think the entire world is going to be like, what the hell is going on? Like, there's definitely an easier solution here than using a freaking nuclear weapon. It's not World War II. You're not trying to stop the Japanese Empire. So, yeah, I would not necessarily be afraid of that, but I understand why people aren't thinking of it, given, the vocabulary that Trump is using. But I would hope that that's not going to take place. And, I don't think it will. But the market is definitely concerned about what could happen today. 99.90 on the Dixie. That one's flat on the day. Dixie not really getting too big of a move. 654.30 on the S&P. Yeah, again, I really don't believe we're using a nuke, but I mean, I've seen a lot of people, scared that we would. I don't think that's going to happen. It's also one of those things where it's like, once the nuclear bombs we had back in 2000 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like those were pretty intense. They killed about 100,000 people on impact. Then the Tsar bomb 20 years later that the Russians tried was 3,800 times more explosive than the World War II nuclear weapons. So I would imagine 80 years later, the bombs we have today are probably even more intense than those. So the level of destruction that would happen with even the smallest weapon, it's unnecessary, and I don't think the United States would actually do that. At least not in this situation. And as a result of that, hopefully that's not something we have to necessarily worry about. Here's another representative today, Jody Arrington, on his support for this war.
Assessment of this war and its impact on our stockpiles and its impact on markets like oil.
Okay, well, I think the president, thank God we have a commander-in-chief that is not full of empty rhetoric, because we've delayed this inevitability for 50 years. I think Iran had a vision that they would escape any consequence and accountability, and that we'd have an Ayatollah that was fully equipped with nuclear weapons. So we'd have another North Korea, save and except for President Trump, who is a man with a bias for action and a man who presented with the facts that we have imminent threats to today and for our children's future, is going to act, even if it's against his personal political interests. So thank God for President Trump and for the courage and political will to do what he's doing. Now,
Your assessment of this.
So it's obviously split on political lines, right? We saw Ro Khanna yesterday, who said there's no way in hell that we would approve $400 billion for this war. And then you have Jody Arrington, who's saying, thank goodness that Trump is a man of his word. And so, I mean, obviously it's very politically isolating, and across the country, you probably have similar beliefs. So tonight, if today is actually the day where we see some serious attacks, then I think we're going to get a better glimpse of where this war is going to or how it's evolving. Bitcoin falling off a cliff as well, 68,104. As that one's down from 70. Nvidia back below 175. We saw this Wall Street Journal headline: Iran cuts off direct diplomacy with the U.S. If that is legit, then that means, 2 minutes ago, Iran has cut off direct communications with the U.S. over President Trump's threat to destroy Iran's whole civilization Monday morning, though talks with ceasefire mediators continue, Middle Eastern officials said. The move has temporarily complicated efforts to make a deal by Trump's 8 p.m. deadline Tuesday, but hasn't ended the talks, the officials say. Okay, so this is actually very consistent with the reporting we got yesterday from Pakistan and Egypt, which is that they are desperately trying to provide a bridge between Iran and the U.S. and, so far have failed. I guess today's the last chance for them to do it, if direct communications, as per the Wall Street Journal, have officially been stopped. If they're blaming the Trump tweet for it, I mean, I understand why. The tweet was very aggressive this morning. Now, if Trump put out the tweet because he's just trying to, build up hype, maybe this time it's not about hype. Maybe this time the Iranians actually, they're not just treating it as hype at this point, and they officially don't want to talk anymore. If it is based on this post from this morning. This is the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. He's live right now. Let's see how he's thinking of this deal.
To 2013, Ambassador Oren, good to have you. Plunging Iranians into darkness and destroying their infrastructure, I don't know. I'm curious as to how you view that, or in the overarching sort of goals of the war.
Well, good to be with you. I think I can speak for most Israelis and say we view it with sadness that we've been brought to this point by the Iranian regime. The last thing we want to do is hurt the Iranian people. We understand that 85% of the Iranian people hate this regime. and we don't want them to suffer. But we hope also that they'll understand that in order to bring down the regime, to get the regime to agree to the conditions which both the United States and Israel have set as the minimum, which is giving up the nuclear program, giving up the ballistic program, stopping, ceasing to support terror throughout the region, and giving up that stockpile of highly enriched uranium that can make 11 atomic bombs. That's the minimum. Of course, there's also opening the Straits of Hormuz, that there may be no alternative but to strike at energy sources, which would bring about, a blackout of electricity. Iran, it should be noted, the Iran regime has been striking at our energy sources since almost day one of this war, not just Israel's, but all of our Arab neighbors as well.
I wonder, it's not discussed that much right now, the idea of regime change, but certainly I remember the president's first address the night the attacks began, where he addressed the Iranian people and told them, now's your chance. I know, there's been reporting that Israel certainly had that hope early on. How do you affect the hearts and minds of the population in terms of how they think about the current regime and their willingness to oppose it when you plunge them into darkness and potentially subjected them to serious hardship?
Well, someday this war will be over, hopefully sooner rather than later. And if that regime remains in power, it's going to be the same regime. It's the regime that's going to torture its people, execute its people, shoot them if they come out to the streets. A deeply corrupt regime that ruined Iran's economy. This was an extraordinarily wealthy country, one of the great oil exporters in the world, and it was impoverished. And so the people will wake up after this war. Hopefully there won't be, deep-seated resentment that Israel and the United States and other countries who participated in the war, and they will proceed, again, to take to the streets. I'm speaking.
I'm not sure that's going to be what happens. I feel like that's the most utopian scenario. Tesla, by the way, losing 340, that after the U.S. and Israel bomb the crap out of Iran, that the people will get up and take to the streets. I mean, there is a world in which that could happen if the regime is decimated and, the potential for a real revolution is in place. Question is, how much collateral damage will have to take place in order for that to actually happen? And, do you have that much of the will of the people that are going to want to take over the regime after they just got the crap bombed out of them? And again, this is kind of what Trump said back on March 4th, that the Iranian people will run to the streets and they will liberate themselves. That has not happened. Regime change has not happened. I mean, Trump keeps saying regime change has happened, but last time I checked, the Ayatollah is still there. Now, maybe he's dead. We haven't seen him in person. But the same dictatorial regime there's no democracy in Iran. There's no king who's in power. So the question is, do they have to go that far to attack the entire country just to be able to have a chance at liberating the Iranian people, which at this point, I don't think anyone knows exactly if that's going to take place. 653.90 on the S&P as that one continues to go down. What do you guys say on the poll? We didn't check the poll. What is the Mag 7 that people are buying the most here? Tesla losing 340 here. Nvidia's the most. Nvidia 40%. Wow. Nvidia 40%. Tesla 339, down 4% here. All right, so I can't get mad about that. Nvidia is, along with Meta, the cheapest in the Max 7. Admit I'm hungry. Has everyone ate breakfast yet? Or dinner, if you're international? I do not eat in the morning, so I am also hungry, but honestly, I've gone so many years at this point not eating from by the time I wake up to like 1 p.m. that it really doesn't even affect me anymore. 339.80 on Tessie. Why is Paramount up 9%? Is it? Paramount's up? Oh, that is weird. Why the hell is Paramount up 8%? Did they also raise prices like Netflix? By the way, watching Scandal, which is my new show on Netflix, while this whole thing is breaking out is kind of crazy. I'm kind of happy I started the show right now because it is very similar to like when you look at the politics of what's going on here and you see all the different forms of communication. Like I haven't watched the show in over 10 years and it's like, damn. kind of similar to how things are playing out right now in the real world. Eggs with mayo is surprisingly good. Carolyn, I'm sorry, but I think we have to ban you from the chat. I don't think that is, quite frankly, I don't think that's acceptable vocabulary to be using in the chat. Eggs with mayo is crazy. Okay, we're not ever doing that. Yes, we will have TT tonight. I don't know if the TT is gonna matter, bro. Like, we'll do the technicals, but like, I don't know if any of it's gonna, like, today in particular, I don't know if it's gonna matter, because one Trump tweet about this deadline, either extending it or actually going through with the attacks, all the technicals fall out the window. So we'll do it, but I think even Jason will tell you that the technicals today, just how relevant can they actually be? Rubio teases more news on Iran talks. Rubio hinted at updates on Iran negotiations, saying more news on that later today, quote, but gave no details. His remarks came ahead of a meeting with New Zealand's foreign minister and following Trump's warning that a whole civilization will die tonight. Rubio declined to address potential war crime questions. Wall Street Journal. One of the officials said Iran intended to send a signal of disapproval and defiance by severing communications. It is unclear if direct talks will resume before the deadline. Wall Street Journal, Iran has cut off direct communications with the U.S. over President Trump's threat to destroy Iran's whole civilization Monday morning. Ceasefire mediators are trying to continue. The move has temporarily complicated efforts, but hasn't fully ended the talks. Iran has stopped negotiation efforts with the United States, informing Pakistan that it would no longer engage in ceasefire talks, according to 3 senior Iranian officials. Okay. Again, every headline makes it seem like this is bad. S&P is not really reacting in the worst way, so I wonder how much the markets believe in it. Then again, there's not a lot of volume coming in either. So maybe everyone's just sitting this out. Eggs with ketchup and mayo is, you guys, people that do fries with ketchup and mayo are wild, bro. It's like you either pick ketchup or barbecue. That's it. And putting mayo into the mix is just, it's just weird, bro. Eat cereal without the milk. Dude, for the longest time, I put the milk in before the cereal. And then I think like a few years ago, I realized you're supposed to put the cereal in before the milk. You're not supposed to put the milk in before the cereal. Like, genuinely, the milk before the cereal makes no sense. But I don't really eat cereal anymore. I haven't had cereal in a long time, bro. Cereal is one of those, it's one of those breakfasts that I don't think I've had in a while. Bill Gates to appear before a House panel on June 10th. Okay, so you got Lutnick, which we haven't heard from in a while. By the way, there was a report yesterday saying Lutnick's next on the chopping block to get fired, potentially based on this Epstein stuff. I don't know if Trump would actually do it. Politico reported that Trump is weighing more cabinet changes after the Bondi ousting, and Lutnick's on the list. That'd be kind of crazy if he's out. But time will tell. All right, let's see what else we have going on. Are you guys debating the cereal? The cereal gets soggy. You fool. Put the milk first on the cereal. Dude, most people put the cereal in the milk. I used to be milk first, but most people do the opposite. SPY 654, Microsoft 368. Let's pull up some macro stuff, see what else we got going on right here. Oh, Bill Ackman's trying to buy UMG for $60 billion. He tried to do this 5 years ago. It didn't work. And now he's trying again. This is the label behind Taylor Swift, Bad Bunny, the Beatles, Drake. Universal Music Group has a vast amount of content that is monetizable in the context of music. I mean, pretty much every artist that's like a legit big artist is signed underneath UMG in some capacity. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Pershing Square has not done the best this year. He's down 20% for the year. So Bill Ackman's not really beating the market, but UMG might be the next thing they try to add to the portfolio. He's also trying to take Pershing Square public, which I still don't get why anyone would buy Pershing Square. It's an ETF of Chipotle, Amazon, Google, and Meta, and Hilton Hotels. Like, it's just, you're essentially buying an ETF, which, you know, is big tech plus a couple of side names. Like, I really don't get what's the value of owning that as a separate stock. But that is something that he's trying to do. Tesla right there, $339.50. And Uber, correct, and Uber. It's like a bunch of big tech names. That's it. Which you could kind of just buy on your own. Yes, Michael Jackson still owns his own music. Michael Jackson actually bought the Beatles estate back in, I think it was the 90s when Michael bought it. It's kind of crazy, the story. He was having a conversation with Paul McCartney, which was a good friend of his. And, you know, Michael joked, he's like, I'm going to buy your catalog. And Paul was like, you're not going to do that. You're not going to buy it. And then like a couple of weeks later, he gets a call from Sony. It's like, yeah, Michael Jackson has purchased the rights to the masters for the Beatles catalog. Like, Michael was a ruthless businessman, bro. He seemed like he was a soft-spoken singer. He was ruthless when it came to business. And he actually understood the value of owning your masters, which most artists end up giving away when they sign their first record deal, because in order to get into the industry, you got to give up your rights to at least your first couple albums. And only if you blow up do you have the leverage to be able to keep the future albums and the rights to those. But your first few albums are usually your best work. It's usually your most timeless, soul-filled music, because that's when you're just getting into the industry. And most artists don't own. I mean, Justin Bieber does not own his rights. Justin Bieber sold it for $200 million a couple years ago. And you know the funniest thing about this is Scooter Braun, which was his manager, who actually understands something about business. Him and Justin Bieber had, you know, they got on really bad terms. They were fighting, they weren't talking. Justin Bieber was selling it on December 31st. Scooter Braun begged him to wait till January 1st so he wouldn't have to pay the taxes in the calendar year. So he could at least get another 15 months to wait to pay the taxes, because if you sell it on January 1st, you pay the taxes a year later. And Bieber was so upset that he sold it in December. I like Justin Bieber's music, but my goodness, this guy is dumb when it comes to business. He's one of the biggest icons, and he doesn't have any rights to his music. And he's broke. There's multiple articles dictating how much he's in debt, and kind of his relationship with Hailey Bieber, his wife, who has $1 billion makeup brand, has kind of allowed them to get out of the debt. But yeah, a lot of artists are not really business savvy. Trump to Fox News: we are moving forward according to the established plans regarding Iran after the deadline expires. Trump to Fox News: if negotiations with Iran make progress today and something tangible emerges, the situation regarding the deadline may change. Okay, so Trump probably just called up Fox News. I'll see if I can get a clip of it, or he might have told a specific reporter. But two statements, one is bullish, one is bearish. The bullish statement here, Trump says at the end of the sentence, the situation regarding the deadline may change if we get something tangible. But the bearish sentiment here is that we are moving forward according to the established plans regarding Iran after the deadline expires. So that'll be 5 a.m. Iran time, 8:30 U.S. time. Trump tells Fox News that Iran negotiations progress could alter deadline status. That is the headline right there, which you would imagine maybe the algos like, S&P not reacting. So I guess around that 8:30 time, 8 to 8:30 time, if Trump is legit serious about this deadline, he's going to go from a dinner with the Indian ambassador that he has at 7 into the Situation Room and then order a bunch of strikes if they don't have a deal. That's basically what he's saying here. Market not really reacting to that at all. Liking Bieber is worse than eggs and mayo. You know what? I will listen to Justin Bieber for the rest of my life before I eat eggs and mayo together, okay? I will listen to him for the rest of my life. But the point is, you know, a lot of these musicians don't know anything about business, and they're so focused on the art. Michael Jackson was the one who actually understood business. And so it kind of makes sense that Bill Ackman's trying to buy UMG. I mean, UMG fleeces every artist they work with because all these artists don't know how to actually, like, really, maybe they don't know or they just don't have enough leverage, but music business is like ruthless for the artist and the talent, and the record label ends up getting most of the profits. And only if you're like one of the elite stars do you get a lot of leverage. but it's a valuable asset. Maybe that's why Bill Ackman's looking for it. Tesla potentially losing 339 right here. This one is just every day another 1 or 2% getting hit. You don't like potato salad? No. Nope. No potato salad. No macaroni. I used to eat that macaroni salad, which is not like macaroni and cheese, but it's like macaroni salad until I realized it had mayo in it. I used to be a fan of that years ago. And then I realized there's mayo. Just can't do it. Just can't do it. What's happening with Tesla? I don't know. I really don't. I feel like it's just SpaceX hype that's taking away from Tesla. Obviously, the downgrade yesterday was bad. The deliveries can't be the reason. I feel like it's this JP Morgan headline. I feel like JP Morgan scared the market, but this guy's been downgrading Tesla for 10 years. So the fact that he's having this much influence is weird. Tesla 339. You need potato salad with mustard. All right. I'm not trusting anything you guys say about food. I'm just not. Like mayo and eggs, mustard. I feel like I'd eat mustard before mayo, though. If I had to pick, I think I would eat mustard before mayo. Rocket Lab, 64.95. That's down. Pouncer, 146. Where's Lemonade? 57.98. Lemonade down 6% here. Is that one still down? What other headlines? I mean, we talked about the main ones with Iran. I mean, I really don't think we can do anything until tonight. Oh, is Greer on? U.S. Trade Representative Greer. We got some quotes from him. He's talking about China right now. Okay, he was on. Here are the quotes. Greer says, we're not looking for massive confrontation with China. U.S. economic relationship with China is stable. We always talk about rare earth minerals with China. U.S. is making strides in domestic self-sufficiency to rare earths. Dude, we haven't talked about China or rare earths or tariffs in what feels like 2 months. We haven't even heard from Greer in a long time. That story feels like last year's story, given the war has taken most of the attention. S&P still falling right here, 653.30. But Greer is saying we are going to be okay with China. I mean, the crazy thing is we haven't even focused on China because, again, we're so focused on Iran. But, I mean, what would happen if, we started having issues with China? Like, it would obviously just create a lot of different issues back and forth that the U.S. is trying to navigate. I have started a war in the chat about mayo. This is why I don't talk about it. That's why I don't bring it up. People are too emotional about it. It's like politics. Even though outside of politics, my side is the right side. Like, everyone is wrong about this. That's just the objective truth. I mean, people can act like they have an argument to support them, but I am correct about this. Okay, I think we got the Trump coverage on Fox. Let me pull this up. See what this is like.
The phone with the president, and he called, and I said, listen, if you were to put odds on it, what were the odds that this is going to end up being a negotiated deal? He said he wasn't going to put odds on it, but he said 8 p.m. is happening. That's what he said. He said, it is, if we get to that point, there is going to be an attack like they have not seen. Now, he's sticking to that at this point. Now, he said if negotiations move forward today and there is something concrete, that could change. But at this hour, he didn't want to put odds on it, but he said it is moving forward with the plans that we have. That's a huge deal. And obviously, we all think that it's a thing that he's putting out there to say, don't do this. He says he doesn't want to do it, but he is, at this hour, sticking to it and saying it might be likely if they don't come to the table.
All right, I'm going to do one final poll. Then I have to get out of here a little early today because we are recording a new episode of Basis Points. But who believes him? Who believes him? You just heard Brett Baer on Fox. Trump apparently just called him, said he really doesn't want to, but he might have to. Let's put this final poll in the chat. Do you believe Trump will attack tonight? That's 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to put a third option. Small attack, no civilian infra. So either yes, he's going to go gung-ho. No, he's going to delay. I know a lot of people here are saying Taco Tuesday. He's going to retrace. Or the other answer, which I don't think is that unlikely, that he does it, but he doesn't do it at the level that he says he's doing it. Tesla 338 just lost 339. And the problem is if he does a little attack and the Iranians are like, oh, that's all you got, like, you know, he's not going to really get the leverage that he's looking for to get them to open the strait. So I feel like it's either yes or no. He either really goes for it or he delays it again. And I guess we'll find out by 8 p.m. today. NY Fed reports March inflation expectations rose to 3.4% for the year ahead and 3.1% over 3 years, with 5-year forecast steady at 3%. We will get CPI on Friday, PCE on Thursday. If those numbers continue to be ugly, then yeah, obviously inflation going up is not going to be the best thing. All right, folks, that's what we got. That is what we got. I will be back on the market close. We will cover what has happened since then. Again, very low volume on the SPY. We are down today, but the volume is not really that encouraging. 17 million shares should be closer to 25 million by now. So let's see if we have the second worst day of volume in the past year. 652.50. Now you're seeing 651.93 was the low today. Let's see if we violate that. If we do, then losing the 650s are in play. And yeah, we will have technicals today. I don't know how much the technicals are going to matter, but probably by 8 p.m. we will have a better understanding of if this is actually happening later today. Who is the guest on Basis Points? We're actually recording 2 episodes, one today, one tomorrow. Oh, 651.90. We lost it. We lost it for a second. Bounced right off of that. We hit 651.83. Literally just for a millisecond we had it, and then we bounced back up 652. There are 2 guests. I think you guys will enjoy them. You have seen them in the finance media world before. They're not as big as like Josh Brown or Vlad, but they are still incredibly knowledgeable people. And I think you guys will enjoy these episodes. So we are getting back to 1 episode a week, and we will have a lot of recording throughout this month. All right, word of the day. Bitcoin just fell below 68,000. It is not Kramer, but I do think you guys will enjoy these guests. I will say the next 2 guests are women. I will say that. They're not men, they're women. And I think you guys will enjoy. I think it'll be cool. Word of the day. Peremptory. Insisting on immediate attention or obedience, authoritative and allowing no refusal. The CEO's peremptory tone left no room for debate. This was the direction, full stop. Okay, I'm going peremptory. That can't be that crazy. Peremptory. I think I'm going to get this right. This can't be that hard. Peremptory. Okay, there we go. Nice little makeup from yesterday. Yesterday was bad. Yesterday was very bad. This one's a lot better. All right, insisting on immediate attention or obedience, authoritative and allowing no refusal. Again, 652 on the S&P. If we lose that, which we did for a second, then 650 is the next level. And by the end of the day, we will see if this continues to go bad. All right, folks, we'll be back in the close. Again, thank you all for joining. I know it's been tough navigating this stuff emotionally, but this is the nature of the markets. This is what we got to do. It's one of those years. This is how it started. Can't complain about it. Now we just have to deal with it. And it is what it is. We will see tonight what ends up happening with this potential deal, if it goes through or if we have attacks. And then I'll be live with Jason in a few hours, and we'll take a look at all these technicals. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.